Apocalypse. I can steal superpowers. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 551 Kidnapping List. As a silver rank warrior, Changchuan Qianli had never been so helpless. Gluo's strength was completely another dimension. No matter how much source power Changchuan Qianli released, it would be quickly annihilated by Gluo's source power. The source power defense that the silver rank was proud of could not even be activated. After that, Gluo's humanoid beast-like power made him unable to resist. The thick metal wall was even hit by Changchuan Qianli's head and a dent was made. However, Gluo still showed no signs of stopping. He pressed Changchuan Qianli's head against the wall again and again. Changchuan Qianli's hair was stained red by the blood from the collision. The increasingly serious wounds made Changchuan Qianli, who was already seriously injured, begin to blur his consciousness. Gluo, I'm willing to tell you anything. Please don't hit me anymore. Changchuan Qianli, is Ning Xinan really dead? She's really dead. I didn't lie to you. Her body was burnt to ashes and scattered into the sea. Then, why did you kidnap Ning Xinan? Gluo's voice was deep and slow. He finally stopped hitting me and asked his own question. Because, my teacher's order. Changchuan Qianli trembled all over. He finally realized that he had offended someone he shouldn't offend. His teeth chattered non-stop, but his panic hadn't ended yet, and his head was hit against the wall again. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. The intense pain made Changchuan Qianli's eyes go black. He dared not hesitate anymore. His shaking head splashed blood everywhere. I don't know the details. I just know that it seems that the Changshan group is carrying out an end plan. The end plan? What is it exactly? I really don't know the specific content. I just received an order to catch a list of suspicious people and inject them with the blood of God. Changchuan Qianli carefully glanced at Gluo, shrank his head back, and whispered, it's really just like this. You have also experienced the whole process. It is just a simple injection of the blood of God. The words I said are just to cover up the whole purpose. You want to do this too. Gluo will not be fooled by Changchuan Qianli. As a perverted scientist, he will not be sad because of executing such a perverted order. Instead, he is very excited. The end plan seems to be looking for someone. Gluo silently glanced at Zinki Xinan, who was leaning against the wall on the other side, and threw Changchuan Qianli to the ground. Gluo will not forget that Zinki Xinan is also on the list of people to be arrested. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Changchuan Qianli thought that Gluo had finally let him go. Lying on the ground, he hurriedly began to nod and bow to thank him. However, before Changchuan Qianli finished speaking, Gluo's right hand penetrated his heart. The star-colored source power began to flow along Gluo's palm and continuously entered Changchuan Qianli's body, starting to destroy and annihilate. Go to hell and repent. Gluo pulled his right hand out of the wound in Changchuan Qianli's heart. Changchuan Qianli, whose scream was choked in his throat, collapsed and completely lost his voice with his eyes wide open. Ning Xinan is dead. Seeing that Changchuan Qianli was completely dead, Gluo's expression was not fluctuating, and his hands covered with blood did not mean to be wiped clean. Zinki Xinan, everything was finally over. Gluo turned around and was about to say a few words, but he didn't expect that at this time. The broadcast suddenly sounded in the base. Attention all creatures still in the base, this base will explode in about 10 minutes. If you don't want to die, run away quickly. A little girl's baby voice suddenly came from the base's broadcast. Her words were a little unclear, but the content was obviously clear enough for people to understand. Self-explosion. Zinki Xinan suddenly remembered the information she saw in the main control room. She never thought that Changchuan Qianli would start the countdown for self-explosion while she was still in the base. Let's go. Gluo didn't care about much at this time. He directly picked up Zinki Xinan on the ground and rushed forward. Gluo, turn right at the first intersection. Zinki Xinan lay in Gluo's arms and became a guide at this time. The girl who had already planned the retreat route in the main control room had barely recovered a little. The metal corridor continued to stretch in the darkness, as if it was a secret passage leading to the deeper part of hell. However, in Zinky Zillion's eyes, this road ahead is a brand new world. In the empty base, the lights in the silver-white passage began to flicker due to unstable power supply. The countdown to the explosion of the base was advancing minute by minute, and the monsters that were led away could no longer hear the roar. The huge polar bear with blood all over the ground had completely lost its life. But at a certain moment, the bulging belly of its corpse suddenly deflated slowly and then moved, as if it was halfway through the noise. Broadcast again. This base is about to be destroyed. Those who can understand human language should run away. After shouting at the top of her voice for the second time, Zuxia, who was lying on the broadcasting station, threw the microphone on the table. Then with a squeak, the girl sank into the chair that could completely surround her, which made her, who was only about 7 or 8 years old, look like a squirrel nesting in a tree hole. Well, the broadcast is over. I should find a place to sleep well. I'm really sleepy. The little girl slightly combed her snow white long hair. Her pure white eyes were still half closed, and it was obvious that she was already very sleepy. After a while, the little girl slowly stretched one foot under the chair, but Changqiu and Qianli usually adjusted the support too high, and Zuxia's poor short legs slid off the chair before they even touched the ground, and sat on the ground with one butt. It's boring. There's nothing fun in this world. The little girl who fell to the ground showed no signs of pain. She sat on the ground blankly, not caring at all that there was still 10 minutes before the explosion and collapse. Zuxia sniffed, as if she smelled something. The white-haired little girl raised her eyebrows and began to climb up from the ground clumsily. The situation was really like a stupid bear waking up from hibernation, but it was a pity that Zuxia was still extremely sleepy and did not wake up in high spirits. The little girl got up and staggered forward and walked out of the door, looking like a tumbler walking on two legs. The long metal corridor was already dimly lit, but the little girl's appearance of not looking at the road at all seemed to have no effect. She crossed 2 corners in a row and stopped outside the gate of Area A. The breath of new life. Is it around here? Chapter 552. Roaring. Oh, so it's hiding here. As if she had discovered something, Zuxia, who had almost completely closed her eyes, finally opened them a little. At this moment, not far in front of Zuxia, where Changqiu and Qianli had fought with the mutant polar bear before, the giant bear's body, which was already soaked in blood, was trembling slightly on the ground in a strange way. The sleepy girl stepped forward through the gate, approached the bear's body step by step, and checked the cause of the abnormality. At this time, the originally huge white bear seemed to have been drained of flesh and blood, and was shriveled to only the outer thick fur. In the abdomen of the body, there was a small rolling ball that was constantly moving, making the mutant bear's body tremble constantly. Posthumous cub? Do bears in this world have the characteristic of absorbing vitality? Zuxia walked to the side of the white bear's body, and her delicate fingers scratched the abdomen of the body. The thick and tough fur instantly opened like a zipper, and sensing Zuxia's presence, the little guy inside the body also hurriedly crawled out. The snow-white little polar bear was only about 50 centimeters in size, with several blood-red lines extending on its back and limbs, looking quite majestic. It looks like it tastes pretty good, the sleepy girl murmured as she grabbed the little polar bear. The poor little guy looked at Zuxia, and after feeling Zuxia's strange gaze, he trembled like chaff, his eyes tightly closed, and even the struggle of his limbs seemed cautious. It's a pity. It's too small, there's not much meat, and the smell of vitality is not that good. Zuxia rubbed her eyes with her free right hand, thinking for a while, and then Emo held the polar bear cub in her arms. The little white bear trembled, huddled in Zuxia's arms, motionless, allowing the sleepy girl to try many positions in a row, and finally fixed in a position that was obviously very uncomfortable for it. Humans seem to like toys and the like very much. As a cute little girl, how can I live without a teddy bear? Stuffed dolls are too fragile and will break easily. I'll just have to make do with this furry little thing. Zuxia patted the polar bear cub on the head with satisfaction. The little guy screamed twice in a low voice, then his head fell down and fainted. Really? Weak? Zuxia yawned again. Since the doll couldn't be cute anymore, she simply stopped holding it. She just lifted the fur behind the little white bear's neck, like a little girl holding a teddy bear, and slowly walked towards the other side of the passage. At this time, the set time seemed to have arrived. The lights on both sides of the metal passage suddenly turned red, and harsh noises began to echo throughout the base. And then, there was flames and roars. I don't know where in the base a violent explosion started. The sound spread with the tremor. The explosion paused for 1 or 2 seconds, and then continuous explosions roared. The whole base seemed like a huge ship that hit an iceberg and was sinking. The collapse and rumble spread everywhere in the tremor. The passage with flickering lights was also shaking, because of the vibration, but the girl Zuxia walked very steadily. The area where she was had not started to explode yet, but the roar was approaching. But Zuxia was not anxious at all. She walked into a room leisurely and pressed a few times on an eggshell-like cabin on the side of the door to open the electronic lock. Captain Changchuan Qianli, welcome to use a test version of the emergency escape device. Starting now, an electronic female voice sounded, and then the metal eggshell opened the hatch. Zuxia jumped in and pulled the hatch closed. So, in the approaching flames and explosions, the escape device that Changchuan Qianli prepared for herself was used by a strange visitor. Boom! Exclamation mark. Boom. Boom. Fiery explosions quickly exploded in different places in the underground base. The flames gushing out of countless rooms looked like giant snakes running. Starting from the main control room, important places exploded one after another, and the Bosi hospital on the ground also began to collapse. The whole world in the underground space seemed to be falling down in a roar. In this natural disaster-like tremor and shaking, the sealed passage leading directly to the ground was instantly opened and completed, and the eggshell-like cabin flew into the blue sky. Boom. 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 Amid the deafening roar, the luxuriously decorated hospital on the ground completely collapsed in the flames of the explosion, as if a giant beast had swallowed it into its mouth. The flames licked wantonly, and the far excessive explosions continuously threw steel and cement into the distance in order to prevent the invasion of 2 powerful enemies. The secret base specially prepared excessive amounts of blasting explosives to perish with the enemy. Whoosh! The egg-shaped escape hatch didn't fly very high in the sky and fell on the side of a hill in a parabola shape. Then the hatch opened instantly, and the sleepy girl pulled the little white bear with her left hand, climbed out with her hands and feet, and muttered in a daze. Damn it. What a bad experience. When I was peeking, I thought those humans made it very interesting, but why are they so lazy when they really use it? If I had known, I might as well get out by myself. Zuxia climbed out of the escape hatch and lay directly on the grass next to her, panting for a long time. At this time, the sky gradually brightened, and the sun sprinkled like a veil, and the endless green fields were coated with a layer of soft brilliance. A slightly cool breeze blew over, and Zuxia turned her cheek and naturally saw the 2 people in the woods a little further away. After fighting with all their lives, it was an escape under the whip of the crisis of death. Jialuo and Zingzaqizilan didn't know how long they ran. Anyway, in this safe place, the 2 seemed to have finally let down their guard. Jialuo leaned against the tree and fell into a light sleep. The seriously injured purple-eyed girl fell into a deep sleep beside him. She grabbed his corner and her slightly frowned brows slowly relaxed. It looks so peaceful, but it's a pity. Poor ignorant humans. The sleepy girl yawned again, barely holding on to sleep, and casually grabbed the little white bear that she had thrown beside her and put it under her head as a pillow. Looking up, the blue sky supported the boundary of this world high, and the thin clouds kept floating. Everything seemed peaceful and natural. However, in the next moment, a disaster that seemed to shake the world began. It was the prelude to the end of this world, representing the proof that everything was irreversible. The eldest sister of this world had died, and the last resistance was completely defeated. So, on this day, at this moment, he who confirmed his victory finally began to declare his existence. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 553 The Beginning of the End. Boom! A huge roar suddenly sounded in the sky. The sound was like thunder and explosion, and in an instant it seemed as if the whole world was shaking. The clouds in the sky shattered into large pieces of cotton wool floating away, and the manic wind swept through the sky. But the roar only sounded 3 times, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The people on the ground thought it was thunder in the clear sky, and after a slight surprise, they lost interest in looking up. But Zuksha on the grass could clearly see that on the blue dome, the existence called the world barrier was completely shattered. At this point, the being that was spying on this world finally arrived. However, perhaps because he was worried about something, he did not immediately show his body in this world. So what Zuksha saw was just a huge eye that spanned the sky, hanging above the sky, staring at this dimly lit world. The desolate god, the messenger of the abyss, was pulled out of the sea of souls through 73 evil thoughts such as resentment, pain, decay, fear, and desolation, and reshaped into a true world. It is difficult for humans to imagine how majestic and huge the desolate god is. Just one of its eyes has filled up the sky that humans can see. His pupils that can see through the barriers of space are as deep and distant as the deep sky, emitting the dazzling color of the stars when they are annihilated. In the clear sky with light clouds, the sky is like a layer of green ice. Under the sunlight like a thin curtain, the desolate god, who is waiting to eat, gave up spying. It silently moved its pupils back, and darkness and fog gradually spread and enveloped it, making its grand corner disappear. And then, it was a blow like a star collision. The dark shadow source power, as dark as a quagmire, turned into a crystal-like spear. The tip of the spear, tens of kilometers long, directly penetrated the ice-like sky. Dense cracks began to spread in the sky, giving people an illusion that it was about to break. However, what people didn't expect was that it was not the sky that was broken, but the spear in his hand. The tip of the spear that had pierced into the world exploded like broken glass, and the black light spots in the sky exploded and fell to various places in the world. This world, the star spirits are defeated, the messenger of Alea has disappeared, and the disaster of mankind is coming. Zuksha watched the dark star-like fragments flee far away, her expression solemn and heavy. Every world is always protecting the multiplying creatures. Before the catastrophe that she can no longer protect comes, she will give her children the last chance of life. That is the star spirit, the son of the world who was born blessed, holding the blade of heaven, and carrying out the destiny. However, this world is still too weak after all. Even a desolate god like the world eater, Tikatera, can completely block it. Tikatera can do it so thoroughly. This world is really too lame. If the previous world was as weak as this one, how could I fall to this point? Zuksha stared at the scenery that was difficult for ordinary people to see, and slowly stood up. Thinking about her past experiences made her grit her teeth. No, this is not the main reason. The most important reason is that idiot Tikatera, your mother's world eater. You wait for me. While I was suppressing the riot, you attacked me ruthlessly. What kind of cuckoo in the magpie's nest is this? I can tolerate this, but you, idiot, your head is as rotten as shit. You actually drained the pond to catch fish, and destroyed my fishing ground. Zuksha is getting angrier and angrier now. The more she thinks about it, the more she feels wronged. She used to have such a wonderful life. She ate and slept every day. It was better than staying in the Sea of Souls. However, everything she had was ruined by the world eater Tikatera, this turtle bastard. It's all gone. You wait for me. I will keep an eye on you. Don't give me a chance. If you give me a chance, I will definitely make you suffer. Although Zuksha looks like an 8-year-old girl, her lifespan has long exceeded the limit of human history. This long relationship with humans has made her have some human temperament. Huha, don't be angry. Don't be angry. You will be so angry that you will die. Why be angry with a retarded baby who was just born not long ago? There is no need. Zuksha sneezed for a long time and finally felt a little better. She sneezed, rubbed her nose, and raised her head again. The sky had returned to normal. The dog thing is not so anxious. It knows that if it doesn't get it, it can't eat anything of the last restriction of the Noazingian Empire. The white-haired little girl standing on the side of the mountain frowned tightly, thinking carefully about something, but everything can no longer be returned, and no one can save it. But fortunately, this world can still hold on for a while. I don't have to run away immediately. I will see the opportunity. In short, I must not let the dog thing to Katera enjoy it. Izuku stood there and muttered for a long time like a madman, angry and gritting her teeth, and she didn't get better for a long time. Alas, die early and reincarnate early. I'm a non-stick pan. The little girl sighed in annoyance, bent down and picked up the unconscious little polar bear on the ground. The next second, as if all her energy was drained, Zuxia, who was holding the little white bear, became sleepy and drowsy again. I'm so tired. I actually did such a strenuous activity. I must have a good sleep and replenish my energy. Zuxia opened her mouth and yawned again. She sniffed, but the grass stems in the wind took advantage of her, and she sneezed suddenly. At this time, the sleepy girl happened to see Gielluo and Zingzakizilan, who were still sleeping. She curled her lips, snorted coldly, and muttered viciously, "If you were not the only humans in the world who could continue to resist the world eater, Katera, would I care about you?" Exclamation mark. The marriage line is messed up like this. What a perfect match of dogs and bitches. It can be regarded as a complaint of envy, jealousy, and hatred. The drowsy little girl squinted her eyes and staggered to the top of the mountain. Then her small figure gradually disappeared in the green fields of the mountain. In the sky, as the abnormality dissipated, the scattered clouds returned to tranquility again, as if everything just now was an illusion. The sunlight sprinkled down, allowing thousands of creatures to enter the journey of life again. At this time, the cause and effect of the human world has not yet been able to perceive the impact of the sound of this early morning. But soon, the inner world will tear off its skin, allowing those people who live ordinary lives under the light to see the great disaster. Of course, maybe this world has been swallowed up by sorrow, and the mutual collapse and crushing of human beings may be more terrible than the destruction of gods in some ways. The end of the world may be the most anticipated ending for many people. Chapter 554 Black Halo. The shade of the trees formed an umbrella, and in the gaps, the warm sunlight hit the cheeks, making people feel as if the world was caressing her children. Suking-han, do you want to hold me while you sleep? But my arm is numb. If you don't move, my arm will be ruined. Gielluo, who was sleeping, was dreaming a beautiful dream that could never come true. After a bunch of random mumblings, he woke up in a daze. Suking-han? Gielluo didn't know what happened. He raised his right hand in a daze and pushed the figure lying on his left arm, but the other party held it tightly and failed to push it away. Gielluo squinted his eyes and patted Suking-han beside him. Suddenly, he found that it was not the touch in the dream. An electric current suddenly flowed through his nerves, and Gielluo suddenly woke up. With his eyes fully opened, he finally saw the situation in front of him clearly. The one sleeping on his left arm was not Suking-han, who existed only in his dreams, but the proud and cold girl, Zingzakizilan. Gielluo rubbed his forehead, feeling a little helpless about the situation in front of him. The girl on the meadow slept peacefully, her long black hair spread out like a black blanket behind her. There were traces of tears in the corners of her eyes, and the blood stains on her cheeks and body had dried up. Her soft and weak appearance looked pitiful. She actually fell asleep like this. Gielluo looked down at the time and couldn't help sighing. He kept his left hand still, raised his upper body, and leaned his head on the solid tree trunk behind him. The leaves above his head fluttered into a shadowy shade, and the breeze rose from a distance, rolling the meadow into waves, and the Bosi hospital in the distance had become an inconspicuous small spot where many vehicles gathered, and there seemed to be people investigating the cause of the accident. The two of them were lying in a very secluded place, and they were not worried about those theoretical investigators running to such a far forest to investigate, so Gielluo had no intention of moving, and simply leaned against the tree to recall the previous scene. This night was full of ups and downs, and Gielluo still remembered the things before killing the mutant Rottweiler. Although the things that happened afterwards were a little vague, Gielluo could be sure that he had accepted crossing Yan's help, successfully survived the crisis, and saved the 4th Silver Rank Realm Warrior, Star Dragon Bloodline. Disaster remains. Gielluo patted his palm on his heart, and nothing unusual happened. He tried his best to empty his mind, but he couldn't remember crossing Yan's complete words after all. However, even though the words in his memory were a little hazy, Gluo at this time did not have any worries in his heart, but inexplicably felt a sense of security, just like when you are not at home, your friend stays at your house for a day, and there is no need to worry about anything, because the house is still yours, and the other party has no ill intentions. Crossing Yan, after all, she is a good child. Source power is really like liquid. Gluo tried to clench his right hand and observed the scene after the source power left his body. The unimaginable power filled his body. However, because Zinki's in iron was still lying on his arm, it was not suitable for any exercise test for a while. He could not determine his current situation with just a simple feeling. Ning's in iron, she is dead. Gluo's thoughts were complicated, and all kinds of information were entangled in his mind. Because there were too many things to think about, he couldn't think of anything. Gluo tried to sort out his thoughts, but he couldn't sort out any ideas after sorting them out for a long time. In the end, Gluo simply didn't think about anything and just looked up at the sky. The clear sky was sparse and continuous with clouds, and it looked like dandelions were floating around. Gluo looked at the distance very relaxedly and suddenly found a small black light spot in his sight, floating and flying. The light spot was very small, making people feel as if it was just a speck of dust, or the wind blew up the outer packaging of a piece of potato chips, and the tinfoil part reflected the sunlight in the distance. Will there be black spots of light in the sun? Gluo frowned slightly and rubbed his eyes hard, but the light spot in the distance was still floating over with the wind, and it was getting closer and closer. When Gluo's eyes were almost blurred, the black light spot finally floated over. It was indeed a flashing black halo, but it was very small, only the size of a marble, and the light was not dazzling. It fluttered over and slowly landed on the leaves above Gluo's head, disappeared, or merged into it. Gluo watched the light spot disappear. After it touched the leaves, he wanted to get up and take a closer look, but Zinki's in iron was still sleeping and holding him tightly, so he had to give up the idea. Unexpectedly, the leaf swayed twice in the wind and actually fell down, and the trajectory was very strange. There was no wind, but it was thinking of Zinki's in iron. Gluo gently stretched out his hand and stopped it halfway, and the green broadleaf fell into his hand. Gluo looked carefully at the ordinary leaf, ordinary petiole, and ordinary stipiole. This leaf was exactly the same as the ordinary one, without any difference. I don't feel anything unusual. Gluo used his source power to explore it, but didn't get any results. He didn't think about it anymore and just planned to put the leaf in his pocket, even as a souvenir. But just when he took the leaf out of his sight and put it in his pocket, the leaf suddenly disappeared. There was no sign, no light, and even no abnormality, but the leaf really disappeared silently. Gluo quickly turned over his palm and suddenly felt a sticky touch flowing along his palm through his arm and shoulder blade, and finally stopped at the heart. Damn, I'm not parasitized by something. Gluo hurriedly tore open his dark t-shirt, and there was a black symbol right above his heart. The symbol looked like an abstract word, death. Gluo's fingers slowly rubbed on the black runes, and a vague message suddenly emerged in his mind. Gods, words. Gluo muttered this word for no apparent reason, and a sense of sleepiness suddenly appeared in his body. Before he could react, he felt his head leaning on the tree trunk suddenly loosen, and he fell asleep instantly. Gluo, who suddenly fell asleep, began to enter a dream in a daze. He seemed to be guided by something, and told him some information. Because it seemed to be only a damaged piece, the part that Gluo felt could not be presented very clearly, but as a word from God, it seemed to tell Gluo something very powerful. I don't know how much time has passed, but Gluo in the dream felt that time was very long. At the end of the dream, he was brought to a huge closed door. Chapter 555 Dam Burst. The chosen ones, go and collect the words of God, and listen to the teachings of God. Keep going forward, you will gain an immortal body and supreme power. The huge door like black rock is engraved with a language that humans cannot recognize, but the strange thing is that the meaning expressed in it is directly imprinted in the consciousness. In a trance, Gluo looked at the words on the door and finally understood what the dream was about. These are the words of the god of desolation and desolation, Tikatera. What does he want to do? Gluo felt a little strange, but still followed his own feelings, walked to the front of the giant door, raised his hand, and put his palm on the black rock-like giant door. There was a coldness between the touches, like the eternal ice. Obeying his inner thoughts, Gluo just pushed lightly, and it is even possible that Gluo himself did not use any force. The door opened, and behind the door was the familiar huge pupil that was enough to span the sky, but it was different from the state that Gluo had seen before. At this moment, the giant pupil was empty, gloomy, and lifeless, as if it had fallen into a deep sleep. Looking for, my words, power, new life. Gluo stood in front of the lifeless giant pupil, feeling only a creepy fear. The whispering whispers kept echoing in his mind, as if to engrave the command in his mind. Damn. Are you still using hypnosis? Gluo didn't know what was going on. He held his breath and began to try to awaken the evil corpse of the star dragon in his body. However, the giant pupil seemed to have noticed Gluo's abnormality, and before the power of the bloodline intervened, Gluo was kicked out of the space. Gluo, what's wrong with you? Are you poisoned? In the anxious voice, Zinkizinan was almost in front of Gluo's eyes. She looked at Gluo and opened his eyes, and the anxious expression on her face finally slowed down. Gluo, you finally woke up. What's wrong with me? Gluo was startled by Zinkizinan's closeness. At this time, he seemed to have sensed the instinct of crisis. The purple-blue source power began to flow throughout his body. Finally, the star-colored source power emerged in his palm. It was a ball of light, like a candle under the scorching sun at noon, tiny, but stubbornly emitting light. At this moment, Gluo has returned to normal. He lifted his clothes and looked at the position of his heart. The strange character before had disappeared. Gluo, why is your source power purple-blue? Ah, my source power attribute is quite special. It is of star attribute. Star source power. This is the first time I've heard of it. My source power is of thunder attribute. Thunder source power. Zinkizinan quietly distanced himself from Gluo, as if to cover up his previous mood, and turned his head to look at the sun in the distance. It was just past morning, but strangely, the fiery clouds on the horizon had already formed a pool, and the dim sun was as quiet as the wild. Gluo, it seems like we slept for a long time. Crossing Kizin stood up from the ground and walked out of the shade of the tree. The breeze mixed with the grass stems made her waist-length black hair fly all over the sky. In silence, the girl with purple eyes turned her head, and the orange light dyed her slightly hesitant cheeks. That beautiful and delicate face seemed to turn into a sun-drenched coast. Gluo, thank you very much for your help. If it weren't for you, I would probably not be able to come back now. You're welcome. I actually want to apologize to you too. Gluo collected his thoughts and stopped thinking about Shenming's words. Instead, he faced the girl in front of him seriously. I'm sorry for Ningxinan's death. I couldn't save her. No, Ningxinan didn't die. The one who died was a girl named Kuangxinsu. Zinkizinan looked at Gluo's guilty expression and finally didn't continue to hide it. Kuangxinsu had died under her name, and she couldn't let her lose her name forever. So, the girl chose to confess to Gluo. This was trust and the last test. What? Kuangxinsu? Gluo had never seen Ningxinan or Kuangxinsu. He didn't know who Changqiu and Qianli had captured, and he could only hear about the identity of the deceased. Gluo, I'm the real Ningxinan. A long time ago, my sister Ning Yiking let Kuangxinsu pretend to be me and live under my name to protect me. Gluo looked at Zinkizinan's sad expression and felt speechless for a while. Ning Yiking, you are really a sister control. In order to protect your sister, you can do this. You are a little genius. You are really Ningxinan? Yes, that's right. Ningxinan, Zinkizinan, both names are Zinan. You didn't notice. Zinkizinan's expression at this time seemed very frank. She didn't need to make up this lie. What's the point of pretending to be a dead person? It's funny, I haven't used my real name for a long time. Now suddenly, it's like talking about someone else. Then, should I call you Ningxinan, or Call me Zinkies in iron, Nings in iron, just treat it as dead. I have no other way. Zinkies in iron's last half sentence was very difficult to say. It is actually a very sad thing to let a person abandon his surname and real name. But now, Zinkies in iron has no choice. If she wants to live, she can only do this. This was the last request of her sister Ning Yiking before she left. Zinkies in iron could not and should not violate it. GLUO, I can only do this. GLUO listened to the girl's crying voice, and his heart was in a mess. He even hesitated whether to tell the girl in front of him that her sister was dead. The sister who loved her the most and cared about her the most was dead and would never come back. She was just 18 years old this year, and not long ago, she lost her best friend and suffered a series of injuries. Now, is it really appropriate to tell her the news of her sister's death? Zinkies in iron, actually, I have seen a woman named Fu Xining. GLUO hesitated for a long time, but in the end he couldn't bear to conceal and deceive. He took out the walnut-sized crystal in his pocket and put it in Zinkies in iron's hand. She told me that your sister Ning Yiking is dead. This is the only relic left by your sister for you. GLUO. My sister, really? The girl's strength finally collapsed at this moment. Her lips trembled, and tears began to fall silently. The girl clenched her fists, clenched her teeth, and choked with sobs. Thank you, for bringing me this news. GLUO stood in front of the girl, looked at her crying, like she was collapsing, and closed his eyes silently. Chapter 556. Worshipping God. The sky was dark, and the sun and clouds had not appeared in this world for 10 years. Time seemed to have lost its meaning here. All things in sleep were just waiting indicator of us all the moments. This was the seat of the god of hearing, a place where the time and space were intertwined. On the mountain in the center of this world, it seemed that one could touch the sky with one hand. The snow that never melted was piled up with indifferent silence. The cold wind was swelling and raging here. Under the dark sky, only two small black dots could be seen moving in the cold white. How far is it? I'm so tired. I want to rest. The woman who had been at the back suddenly shouted lazily. She stomped on the thick snow, and the surface that had been frozen into a snow armor suddenly shattered. She fell directly into the snow pit in her long skirt, and suddenly became a state with only her beautiful head exposed outside. Very soon, the man in front of him who was walking through the cold wind was still stepping forward. His thin shirt and trousers kept shaking in the wind and snow. His expression was always solemn, like a believer going to worship. He didn't have a trace of laziness like the woman behind him. Hey, wait for me. You don't know how to be a hero to save the beauty. You are such a blockhead. The beautiful woman with heavy makeup shouted in a muffled voice. She curled her lips, supported herself with both hands in front of her, and stepped lightly on the thick snow. There was no snow stain on her black dress. TSK. It's so boring. He is just a stupid man. The young woman muttered twice, and could only take another step to catch up with the figure in front of her. Her steps were not too fast, but each step seemed to skip a long distance, and once again return to the initial distance between the two. The woman took 2 steps and shouted again. Why don't they take us to the top of the mountain? We have to start climbing from halfway up the mountain. It's such a far distance. What a waste of time. If you don't want to die, just go away. This mountaintop is the place where His Majesty listens to gods. All creatures that flew up from halfway up the mountain have been smashed to pieces. The man in the white shirt finally stopped. There was still some dense stubble on his face. He looked to be about 30 years old with a serious expression. Chiao Senjao Gahura, we are no longer human. Time is not that important to us. Her Majesty asked us to come to see her, so we have to come, as long as you don't want to die. Oh. The woman who was stared at and scolded by her companion in front of her was indeed honest. She walked forward a few steps and asked the man in his ear, why is this mountain 9,990 meters? If it is 1 meter higher, wouldn't it be 10,000 meters? You. The man snorted coldly, as if he was about to get angry, but he was suddenly startled and immediately turned around and knelt down in the direction of the top of the mountain. He knelt on one knee on the snow with his head lowered devoutly and humbly. The 1 meter this mountain is missing is just 1 step away. If you can't take that step, it will always be this high. A faint and indifferent voice suddenly came with the cold wind, and the speaker sounded as if he was explaining, or as if he was mumbling to himself. "Hey, Dali and Izumi." The beautiful woman froze all over, and just as she was about to ask something, an irresistible pressure came over her. She fell to her knees on the ground, and her upper body was pressed into the snow. She didn't even get to ask what she wanted to ask. Boom! The two kneeling people were not far from the top of the mountain. They could clearly see the dark storm sweeping the snow there. The frozen soil and ice on the top of the mountain began to shatter densely, and the huge cracks were slowly opening up, looking like a huge door that was slowly being pushed open in an arc. Chiyo Senjou Gahara, Dori Izumi, the woman with a blurry figure, stepped out of the crack on the top of the mountain. A dark storm and snow curtain surrounded her. Her voice pierced through the mixed noises and reached the ears of the two people kneeling on the ground clearly. "The star spirits of the Senkan world are dead. In this world, there is no existence that can resist my god. The plan that has been prepared before can now begin. However, before everything is implemented, you have to clean up the Changshan group. There is no need to keep those who still refuse to be loyal to my god. Don't worry about anything, just kill them all. In addition, the end plan will be temporarily suspended. If we move too much, it is very likely that humans will completely unite and delay the time of final victory. So, continue to corrupt and divide humans as before, and let them fight each other." There was no human emotion in the woman's voice. Her eyes swept from the two people and finally glanced at the woman named Chiyo Senjou Gahara. "Other than that, don't do anything unnecessary, complete the mission, or die. Understood?" The man quickly bowed his head and saluted, but the woman with her head buried in the snow could not pull her head out. Daoli Hequin, the star spirit of this world, the one named Ning Yiking, seems to have a sister. What happened to her? "Now, Your Majesty, after capturing Ning's in iron, I went to check it out. I can confirm that she is just an ordinary person and has no value." Daoli Hequin paused, pondered for a while, and then told the final result of Ning's in iron. Ning's in iron's temperament is very strong. She has basically survived the corrosion of the blood of God, but she chose to commit suicide. She is dead and her body has been sent for a search. "Well, that's it. I understand. You go back." The woman on the top of the mountain has been standing in the wind and snow. She pointed her finger downward, and a ball of black source energy flew out, then split into two, and drilled into the hearts of the kneeling man and woman. "The Changshan group is handed over to you. I believe you will not let me down. When the day comes, when my god descends, I will personally welcome you, and become the new apostles. May your majesty be well." The man knelt down and bowed his head, then turned around and hugged the woman who was lying like an ostrich in the snow next to him, and quickly retreated from the snow-capped mountain. "Wait. Still have to wait, my god. Please rest assured, your first apostle will not let you down." The woman stood still, and the wind and snow around her began to calm down. In the blur, she raised her head, and her expression seemed to be communicating with the gods. Fu Xing thought she succeeded, but she didn't know that we could always perfectly shield the signals from the Noazingian Empire. It's just, if Fu Xing hasn't contacted other colleagues for too long, it is very likely that other watchers will come and investigate. Now, we still don't know in which sector of the world the nearest watcher is stationed, but what is certain is that for at least 5 years, we can have nothing to worry about. In the soft whisper, there was a half plane without the sun, moon, and stars, and the sky was so gloomy that it seemed to collapse. On the highest peak in the center of the throne of God, the wind and snow stopped for the first time in 10 years. Chapter 557, Grand Imperial Court. In a secret place in Hamakoa City, the spacious room was full of plants of various shapes and sizes. The owner of the room, who was already middle-aged, but still looked as young as a college student, was humming an inexplicable tune and watering the flowers beside him. The computer chair he was sitting on and the computer equipment in front of him were the only things in the room besides the plants. The green surroundings seemed to make him very happy. Unfortunately, the seclusion was soon interrupted. The door of the room was knocked on several times quickly. A blonde British woman pushed the door open and ran over in a hurry. "Professor, the results of the turmoil at the Bosi base have been sent over." Although she came in a hurry, the woman still bowed to the elegant man. At this moment, the person in power has left the flowers and plants and slowly turned his chair. What's the situation? Didn't the previous report say that it was attacked by unknown persons? The test subjects ran around everywhere and ended up turning the base upside down. Everyone had to evacuate. Yes. The woman paused for a moment and continued in fluent English. The evacuation was completed 3 hours ago, and then the base self-destructed. All traces have been erased. The current person in charge of the base, Changchuan Qianli, has been confirmed dead. There is still no clue about the attacker, but the investigation team is working hard. Forget it, let them come back. There is no need to waste time. The young-faced man gently pinched the flower leaves next to him, still smiling on his face. The information of the intrusion can be completely hidden. Only one person in the Bosi base has this authority. My disciple must have done something weird, but now it seems that he has failed. The man did not feel any psychological discomfort about the death of his disciple. It seemed that he just felt like garbage was taken away. Changchuan Qianli is dead, so she's a failure anyway. Tell me something that interests me, Professor. According to the records, Changchuan Qianli captured a person named Gluo, and he seemed to value him very much. The blonde woman tapped the photo on the folder and gave some cautious advice. I guess the information Changchuan Qianli gave us was actually forged. There must be something special about Gluo, and he should still be alive. Should we capture him? Gluo. The man gently adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose. His eyes lingered on the photo on the computer desk for a while. His fingers tapped the flower pot and finally shook his head. Forget it. Our help to the Changshan group in carrying out the end plan has already caused a lot of dissatisfaction. We should restrain our actions and keep quiet for a while. Also, help me draft a letter to the director and remind him how much we paid for helping the Changshan group this time, and let him try to get some more benefits. As for the people below, we will also issue an internal letter to remind them that the Changshan group is just our partner, not our own people. Let them keep their distance and don't seek death. After answering, the man thought for a moment and finally took out a key-like object and handed it to the blonde woman. Go and issue an order in my name as the first deputy director of the Daga Shisho to expel those insiders of the Changshan group and notify all jurisdictions to screen and examine their own troops. Lord Otonoshi Hiranori, this. The woman was shocked by the professor's order. Isn't this going to turn against the Changshan group? Obviously, the Daga Shisho is the product of the combination of the government, the Chaebol, and the Changshan group. Now, is going to change? It's okay, the Changshan group won't mind, because they have long anticipated this day. Otonoshi Hiranori had anticipated such a day many years ago, and the impact of these words was something no one had expected. In this world, the forces that threaten the regime cannot be hidden forever. After all, they are too big. Understood. The blonde woman saluted again, took the item handed to her, turned around and left the room. We are all just using each other, and we can accept backstabbing at any time. After all crows are black, so no one should pretend to be a sparrow. Otonoshi Hiranori seemed to sigh in annoyance, picked up the kettle beside him, and prepared to continue watering the plants around him. But at this time, the computer in front of Otonoshi Hiranori suddenly rang a call. Professor Otonoshi Hiranori. Hello. The man on the screen was very upright, and there was not a single wrinkle on his snow-white suit, which made people feel a terrible self-discipline. Oh, isn't this Mr. Katsuhiko Atsu from the Rotten Dog Gang? Otonoshi Hiranori put down the kettle casually, smiled and sat back in his chair. I heard that you encountered some trouble. Those government officials went to harass one of your nightclubs. That's just a small problem. I didn't communicate well with some people, which caused misunderstandings. Katsuhiko Atsu, with a serious face, spoke in a serious manner. He stared at Chisato Nagafune with his eyes, and without waiting for him to bring up any topic, he said quickly, I admire all of you leaders very much. This time there is a lack of communication between the two sides, and I would like to ask you to help deliver the invitation. Oh, don't be anxious. You can't eat hot tofu in a hurry. Hiranori Otonoshi interrupted Katsuhiko Atsu with a smile, leisurely plucked the leaves of the flowers beside him, threw them into his mouth, and began to chew carefully. Mr. Katsuhiko Atsu, I have heard of the name of Rotten Dog for a long time. It's rare that we can get in touch this time. Why don't we do something together? I'll consider it, but I'll leave the matter of introducing the superiors to you. No problem, but I also hope that you can carefully consider my proposal. Atsushi Hironori looked at Atsuhiko on the screen with an inexplicable meaning, and secretly sighed in his heart that this man, whether he was poor in the past or rich now, has always been so stubborn and self-disciplined, which really makes people wonder if he is a robot, and whether he has ever masturbated when he was young. I will. Professor, I have to host a meeting later. Goodbye. Atsuhiko didn't speak out, but he already understood what Atsushi Hironori meant. This exchange between the two was destined to have no other results. So, Atsuhiko decisively didn't want to waste time anymore, but directly pushed the topic to an unknown place. Well, okay. Atsushi Hironori nodded lightly, closed the access link casually, and then he turned his chair around, couldn't help but chuckled, and shook his head. Atsuhiko is really amazing. In just a few years, he has developed the Rotten Dog Gang into this. Well, compared with the Changshan group, it is obvious that local gangs are more trustworthy. Chapter 558 alone. 22:15 on May 26, 2989 in Morikang. The cycle of day and night has been marked, but the turmoil and suffering of the whole day seemed to have stretched the time. This is the second day that GLUO came to the Morikang world, but the things he experienced made him physically and mentally exhausted, with an indescribable sense of powerlessness. In the evening, GLUO informed Zingzaki Zilan of the news of Ningya King's death. This girl, who has not been able to use her real name for more than 10 years, cried until she was hoarse. But GLUO had to admit that Zingzaki Zilan was stronger than he imagined. After losing her only best friend, she learned the news of the death of her last relative one after another. Under such a heavy blow, she quickly cheered up and became more determined. The little girl who had always lived under the protection of her sister finally lost her home completely. She had to face the darkness and wind and rain alone until she died. After crying, Zinki Zilan seemed to have drained away all her sadness and weakness. She looked up at GLUO. Her eyes were red and swollen like a goldfish, but the smile she showed was still bright. GLUO, are you willing to go to the bottom of hell with me? Zinki Zilan, what do you want to do? I want to save the world. Huh. GLUO, this world should not be like this. Everything is wrong. I want to correct it. With you? Of course not by me, so I invite you. Never turn back. Never turn back. Do you have food and accommodation, 5 social insurances, and 1 housing fund, labor insurance, pensions, etc.? No. Then will you bury me after I die? No. Does anyone burn paper during festivals? I don't know. Then can I ask, why me? No. Under the light moonlight, the girl endured the surging emotions, smiles, and tears intertwined on her face. Although she tried her best to suppress them, she still revealed her expectations in crying. GLUO stood not far in front of Zingzaki Zilan. He did not give an answer immediately, but raised his head and looked at the dim lights in the distance, his pupils flickering faintly. Such a dark job sounds so difficult. There is nothing, and you still ask. Can't you just give orders directly? GLUO looked at Zingzaki Zilan, who was trembling all over, but trying to muster up courage, and suddenly felt an indescribable pity in his heart. Under an overturned nest, there will be no eggs intact. This world has come to an end. The grief that Zingzaki Zilan has encountered will be repeated billions of times. GLUO, your answer. The purple-eyed girl seemed to feel something, and a smile bloomed on her cheeks. She stretched out her right hand flat, and then her slender palm was held by someone. It's an honor to join your world-saving team. GLUO was like a newcomer joining a company. There was no hesitation or confusion on his face, only confidence in himself. GLUO, I'm sorry. Zingzaki Zilan raised her head. A quiet expectation flowed in her heart, and the tears finally stopped spinning, turning into delicate drops of water sliding from her cheeks to the ground. And, thank you. Yeah, I know. GLUO accepted Shizuki Arata's apology and gratitude frankly. He let go of the girl's hand, turned around and looked at the city with neon lights. He put his hands in his pockets and looked down disdainfully. Hashizaki Erita, let me see how you save this world. GLUO's journey to the Moraku world was too hasty and panic. The last information he got was just a sentence left by little GLUO. Go to that world and complete Heaven's Blade killing. Please remember, the weak can defeat the strong. Only the abyss can fight against the abyss. This is the purpose and destination of GLUO's journey, but GLUO has no idea how to complete Heaven's Blade killing. In other words, GLUO doesn't know that killing is incomplete. As far as GLUO knows, the composition of Heaven's Blade killing is mainly 3 parts. The first is a fragment given by a girl who calls herself Suzaku. Afterwards, GLUO analyzed that it should be a fragment of Heaven's Blade Zuanian sword. The second is crossing Yan's power, which should be the power of the Star Dragon. This should be the source of the core ability of killing, that is, the power of gravity. Third, when crossing Yan was asleep, GLUO absorbed the source crystal Mu Yingluo of the apostle named Jisuan of the desolate god Ming, which allowed crossing Yan to wake up. But GLUO still has doubts about this part. Jisuan's power should have been converted into energy by crossing Yan for revival, and it is not the material that constitutes Heaven's Blade killing. However, before crossing over, the information that GLUO got from little GLUO was very intriguing. The composition of the Blade of Heaven, Miserable, is based on 1/10 of the fragment of the Blade of Heaven, Zuanian sword, half of the fragment of the Blade of Heaven, Jichun, the power of the Star Dragon as the inscription, the original power of the God of Desolation, the Underworld, the World Eater, Takotera as the Matrix. It was built through despair and hope, curse, and blessing. GLUO guessed that the main body was 1/10 of the fragment of the Heavenly Blade Zuanian sword, which should already be available. GLUO had never heard of Heavenly Blade Jichun, but he had some guesses. The power of the Star Dragon, that is, the power of crossing Yan, should also be available. And the fourth point, the original power of the God of Desolation Takotera. GLUO felt that Jisuan should provide a little, but it must not be much. However, GLUO also remembered that when little GLUO used Heavenly Blade slaying in the field he unfolded, he pierced the body of the Disaster Star and extracted some power. And the Disaster Star, that is, crossing Yan on the dark side, GLUO suspected that she was eroded by the God of Desolation, so the power extracted at that time should also be the original power of the God of Desolation. Analyzing it this way, GLUO seemed to be only missing half of the fragment of Heavenly Blade Jichun, but was his journey through the world really that simple this time? The weak can only defeat the strong with the accumulation of nothing. Only the abyss can fight against the abyss. GLUO still doesn't know what he will take away from the Sinkan world, but he can be sure of one thing. He must witness with his own eyes the entire process of the demise of the Sinkan world. He must know how the God of Desolation, the Dark World Eater, Takotera, devours a world. In this way, when he returns to the Earth world, he will have the experience to fight against the end of the world. In the distance, the stars will rise at night, and all living things will change, fade away and revive, open their eyes and close again, but death is a quiet sleep. People gradually decay in eternity and finally return to the cycle of nature. Life has a long history between the sun and the moon, and the positive and negative sides of black and white always exist. But when the light can no longer cover the darkness, the long night is here. Chapter 559 Location. The night in the suburbs was particularly cold. GLUO and Zinki Zilan did not sleep in the wilderness. Relying on the means prepared in advance, the two had returned to Binchuan City before the next day. This time, GLUO was not taken to the previous hotel. He accepted Zinki Zilan's invitation. In the hearts of the girls, he was obviously one of them. Zinki Zilan was living in a completely new identity under Ning Yiking's arrangement. In the setting, she also has a sister named Zinki Zen. On the way back, Zinki Zilan and Zinki Zen's conversation did not avoid GLUO, and was frank. Judging from the atmosphere of the conversation, GLUO can be sure that Zinki Zen is the housekeeper left by Ning Yiking to her sister, or the housekeeper who handles her huge inheritance. Although GLUO has never met Ning Yiking, he can see from the cage that he can be regarded as the hope of saving the world by Fuxining. That person is definitely an amazing person. But strangely, GLUO can feel that Ning Yiking can almost be described as conservative in the arrangement of her sister. She seemed to be a little doting on Zinzakizanan, or overprotective. What she was doing before was an ambiguous description. Until she stepped onto the battlefield, where her life was in danger. She told her sister the truth about the whole world, and the final arrangement also had some traces of being too hasty. Of course, these are just trivial matters, and GLUO will not pursue them too much. He stayed with Zinzakizanan, just to fight against the god of desolation. The Earth world is suffering from the same crisis as here. GLUO must collect enough information, so that he can know the slim chance of victory. It's really stressful. GLUO sat in the luxury car after the transfer, and his heart couldn't stop worrying. The girl next to him heard what he said, and looked over with a smile. GLUO, don't worry, Zenji is a person who looks very strict, but actually has a good heart. She won't embarrass you. I hope. GLUO scratched his hair helplessly, and didn't say what was really bothering him. Although GLUO believed Zinzakizanan more, when it came to his own secrets, GLUO chose to avoid talking about it, and Zinzakizanan didn't ask anymore. In this regard, Zinzakizanan is obviously a very easygoing person. She chooses to trust you, and will not ask about your past, because what she trusts is the present you. It can be regarded as quite free and easy. GLUO, we are about to reach our destination. Zinzakizanan pulled down the car window a crack, breathing in the fresh air that came into the car, and her mood suddenly became excited. GLUO didn't care at first, but when he looked over, he was also shocked by the scenery in front of him. It was a vast manor, not a western-style castle garden, but an ancient-style building complex with Yungo characteristics. The whole manor was surrounded by high walls, and the walls were covered with high-voltage power grids and surveillance probes. I don't come here often. It used to be my sister's secret base. Before she left this time, she gave me the authority. Zinzakizanan watched the car drive into the gate, and then pulled down the car window completely. She looked at the lush scenery in the manor, and her swollen eyes were full of memories. GLUO originally wanted to comfort her, but he held back before he said anything. Through this series of contacts, GLUO felt that Zinzakizanan was not the kind of pretentious girl. She did not need his empty and boring comfort. All she needed was time. She would soon get out of sadness and truly implement her determination. The two people, whose words were taken away by their thoughts, fell silent. The car quickly drove into the parking lot. The driver, who seemed to be taciturn, opened the door for the two people. Then they saw the long and deep road. GLUO, follow me. There is no way to drive in the manor. Zinzakizanan stepped twice nimbly, like an athlete preparing for a race and warming up. GLUO walked beside her, and followed her through the secluded main gate. Normally, there should be many servants in such a large manor, or to maintain such a large place, there must be many servants. But what makes people uncomfortable is that along the way, GLUO saw only simple and elegant scenery, and no living people could be seen. However, GLUO had specially observed that every place in the manor was very clean. Judging from the dust on the bench, I'm afraid someone came to clean it every day. Zion, why is there no one in the manor? GLUO was really curious, so he used his mental power to scan around, and the result was that everything was normal, but no one was hiding around. There used to be quite a few people in this manor, but most of them were taken away by my sister. Zinzakizanan no longer had a self-pitying expression at this time. She walked beside GLUO, introduced the layout of the manor to him, and answered his questions casually. My sister has been running back and forth over the years. Although she has trained some people, she is still much worse than those cheebles. It's just one time, and there are no more people who can be used. So I'm your team? GLUO smiled, and made a pistol gesture, as if he was going through fire and water for her. GLUO, you are a veteran, don't belittle yourself like this. Zinzakizanan walked to the automatic shopping machine next to him, just pressed the menu, and the drink fell out without even paying. Hey, here you go, veteran benefits. Don't you need to pay? GLUO took the drink, and took a sip, and curiously pressed it, and something really fell out. GLUO, what are you thinking about? How can you charge for something in your own home? There are many such devices in the manor, all free of charge. Zinky Zilan shook the bottle in her hand in a chic manner and walked forward with some pride. Gluo rolled his eyes and followed her. It must be said that it is really a very cool thing to put a lot of vending machines in your own home for free. Although Gluo showed that he didn't care on his face, he was actually very envious. Who didn't want to move a store back home when he was a child? After all, men are teenagers until they die. Okay, Gluo, you are thinking deeply about such an easy to understand thing. The things are there, you can take them at will. Zinky Zilan's eyes occasionally fell on Gluo. Under the dim street lights, her pupils looked sparkling. Gluo didn't notice it because his mind was on other things. Zinyan, I found something very important. What is it? Since I'm following you, should I move in like you? Gluo touched his chin and made an expression that said I was just saying it casually and definitely didn't mean it. Hahaha, of course, as my number one general, you must follow me. That's fine. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 560 Selection. Putting aside the laughter and chat between Gluo and Zinky Zilan, the area of the entire manor is really a bit frightening. The two walked for more than half an hour before they just entered the inner ring gate. Zilan, this road is a bit too long. We can't drive. Let's take a tram or something. Gluo was still able to walk with a leisurely mentality at first, but the more he went in, the more cameras and scanners there were. In the end, he could even see hidden traps and fortresses, which was really scary. Tram. Of course there was in the past, but it's temporarily out of service now. Although Zinky Zilan said before that she didn't come here often, she remembered the route very clearly. At this time, she led the way with a nimble figure and even had time to look around. Why? There are not enough people to maintain the operation? With such a small number of people, of course there are, but Zinky Zilan turned his head and blinked at Gluo's puzzled expression. His eyes were somewhat meaningful. Such a large manor, if you walk, even if someone attacks, there is enough time to react. Enemy cars can't drive in. Gluo heard the metaphor in Zinky Zilan's words and couldn't help looking around uneasily. Zinky Zilan's words made it very clear that the reason why no one can be seen in this manor is because the remaining people are all maintaining the security system. Or in other words, all the living people in the manor are in preparation for war. They are always ready to fight the invading enemy to the death, and at least they have to buy enough time. Gluo, don't look at the broken gate we walked in, but in fact, it is full of anti-tank mines underneath. If something over a certain weight wants to come in, it will be blown up directly. Anti-tank mines, aren't they for military use? Gluo at least knew about Uatang Group. It seemed that it was very good in machinery manufacturing, metal smelting and artificial intelligence, but it did not involve arms. How can you get anti-tank mines through regular channels? They are the ultimate killer weapons on the battlefield, which can make heavy tanks fall to the ground. Although they won't explode when people step on them, who would put them at the door for people to step on? Gluo, in this country, although there are some things that money can't buy, they definitely don't include munitions or fireworks of this level. Crossing keys and Yan restrained the smile on her face. She had received elite education since she was a child, and although she was still childish, she was not a little princess who knew nothing about the darkness of reality. In fact, not only at the door, but also under the outermost wall, anti-tank mines are prepared. Even if the defense line is broken, no vehicle can enter the manor within 3 hours. Are you trying to buy this time to evacuate? Gluo became more and more curious about what Ningyiking was preparing for. Such a manor was obviously more suitable for vacation and living, but why did Ningyiking make such a big scene? Placing anti-tank mines at the door might be just one of the means. Not to mention small things like machine guns and bombs. Gluo was not surprised at all that there were rockets and missiles in the manor. After all, that is the savior of a world. No, I don't know the details, but my sister told me that it was the last resort. The key was placed with Zenji, and it was a force that would destroy everything and kill everyone. Zinky Zilan stretched out her finger, tiptoed, and did her best to draw a big circle in front of her, as if it surrounded everything around her, and it seemed to wrap up the entire city, and even the country. Even this world. Nuclear bomb. GLUO touched his chin, and he believed in his heart that Ninja King could really get a nuclear bomb and set it to the extent that it could be detonated at any time. Zilan, your sister is really an extraordinary person. Yes, it's really extraordinary. Zinky Zilan seemed to break free from the previous pain, showing a very gorgeous smile. She was proud of her sister, so proud. GLUO accidentally mentioned Ninja King again, and couldn't help but feel a little annoyed that he didn't look at the right time. But Zinky Zilan did not immerse himself in sadness, but patted GLUO on the shoulder. GLUO, don't be stunned. We are about to reach our destination. We are going to meet Sister Zen. Well, it's no big deal. GLUO was now somewhat curious about who Ninja King had entrusted all the backup plans to. This person named Zinky Zen was probably the last spark of Ninja King's side. She was like a dictionary, a catalog. Only she could give the answer to all the things Ninja King did. The next route was somewhat beyond GLUO's expectations. Zinky Zilan did not take GLUO to the villa complex, but turned and walked into a glass house. The dense spider plant plants almost blocked the sight of the two. GLUO felt several gazes and slowed down his pace a little, but did not show any hostility. GLUO, it's okay, there are no enemies here. Zinky Zilan felt GLUO's vigilance, reached out and held his palm, and walked shoulder to shoulder with him through the dense spider plant jungle. At the deepest part of the room, GLUO saw Crossing Kizen, and also saw the owner who arranged everything here. She was a woman who looked nearly 30 years old. Her face was not stunning, but she was very intellectual. She sat on the wheel wing with a smile on her face, fiddling with a pot of green spider plant in her hand. Hello, my name is Crossing Kizen, the last gatekeeper. Hello, my name is GLUO, a traveler. GLUO didn't know why Crossing Kizen introduced herself like this. The last gatekeeper sounded like a title, but also like a code. GLUO didn't know the meaning, so he pretended not to understand and gave himself an ambiguous identity. Traveler, that's really hard work. Crossing Kizen looked like a very easygoing person. She reached out and turned the wheelchair. Crossing Kizen hurried over and helped her push it to the tea table on the other side. Crossing Kizen then reached her palm behind her and gently patted the back of Crossing Kizen's hand. She raised her head. Her eyes stayed on the girl's face for a moment, sighed, and shook her head. Zilan, no one can escape death. She just went ahead. Sister Zen, I understand. Zinky Zilan pursed her lips and nodded heavily. She wanted to say something vaguely, but hesitated for a moment, and did not speak immediately. She just pushed Zinky Zen to the tea table. Sit down, I'll be sitting all the time. It's not good for you to stand. Zinky Zen extended her hand to invite GLUO and the others to sit down, and then made tea very dignifiedly. GLUO didn't know much about the tea ceremony, but Zinky Zen's manners were very beautiful and her temperament was very peaceful. Chapter 561 Obsession. GLUO, thank you for everything you have done. If it weren't for you, Zinyan would definitely go to extremes. Crossing Kizen had already understood the whole story from the previous phone call, so she chose to offer her first cup of tea to GLUO. It just happened to happen. Helping someone like this doesn't deserve multiple thanks. GLUO took Crossing Kizen's tea and drank it all in one gulp. Because she didn't understand the tea ceremony, GLUO didn't know if this was considered rude, but looking at Crossing Kizen's expression, it was obvious that she was very happy. Crossing Kizen also calmed down at this time, like a child who made a mistake. She held the teacup, took a sip, and then put it on the tea table. Crossing Kizen added more tea to GLUO, and then poured it for herself. She sat upright in the wheelchair, and the expression on her face became serious. Miss Ninja King left suddenly. Zilan didn't understand what kind of crisis the world was in. Many of her choices were a bit rash. However, since I didn't stop her, I actually agreed with everything Zilan did, and there's no need to hide it. In fact, Miss Ninja King once told me that, if she never came back, the world would completely lose its future, so it wouldn't be a bad idea for Zilan to join the Changshan side. Zinky Zen's words were upright, and they should have been said to Zinky Zen, but Gluo felt that Zinky Zen was testing him by letting him hear these. As an outsider who didn't know the inside story, Gluo naturally chose to remain silent, but after hearing Zinky Zen's words, Zinky Zen became furious. Sister Zen, don't treat me as a fool. My sister's death was also due to the Changshan group. How could I join them? Zinky Zen gnashed her teeth in hatred. She felt that she was looked down upon. Was she so afraid of death, and so stupid and timid in everyone's mind? Obviously, the Changshan group is the enemy. Why would she join them just to survive? This is a betrayal that is more hateful than death. Zinyan, your sister, just hopes that you can live well. As Ningya King's envoy, Zinky Zen is like Zhuge Liang, who was entrusted with Liu Chan when Liu Bei died. She wants to assist Zinky Zen, but she is unable to do so. How can she compare with people like Zhu Wuhao? All she can do is to ensure that Zinky Zen lives well. But on the other hand, Ningya King's explanation is so paradoxical. She has been fighting against the Changshan group all her life, but after her death, she hinted to Zinky Zen that if there is no turnaround, she will take Zinky Zen to join the Changshan side. Zinky Zen is also puzzled and angry, but she always understands that compared with Ningya King, her vision is too small. There are too many truths and secrets, and she only sees a little. Ignorance is also a kind of stupidity. Sister Zen, you don't have to say anything. Even if I die, I will avenge my sister. Zinky Zen said it firmly. She had lost her best friend and relatives, and she had already changed the reason for living to revenge. How could she betray her life in order to survive? Gluo held the teacup and drank a small sip silently. He did not comment on the conversation between Zinky Zen and Zinky Zen. Gluo could see that Zinky Zen had no intention of deceiving the two. Before leaving, Ningya King must have told Zinky Zen that if there was no turnaround and she could not beat the Changshan party, she would just join them. In this way, Zinky Zen should be able to survive. But why Ningya King could say it so absolutely? It was obviously not a simple reason. It is very likely that she had made some preparations. However, at this time, Zinky Zen said this to Zinky Zen in front of him, and it was when Zinky Zen had just lost her best friend and the blood of fighting to the death had not yet dissipated. Obviously, the real purpose of Zinky Zen is to stimulate Zinky Zen's consciousness of resistance, whether it is provocation or forcing Zinky Zen to choose resistance for the sake of face. Anyway, Zinky Zen's words are completely intended to cut off Zinky Zen's betrayal and to strengthen the idea of fighting to the death. Zinyan, you really haven't changed since childhood. Zinky Zen looked at the determination on Zinky Zen's face that would never regret until death, and shook his head helplessly. His eyes met with Gluo next to him for a moment, and then turned to the plain teacup. You are still so unable to hide things, and still so clear. In this case, Miss Ningya King, is she really dead? Zinky Zen was still hesitating when to speak and tell Zinky Zen this information, but she never expected that Zinky Zen actually guessed it inexplicably. Even Gluo on the other side was frightened by Zinky Zen's intuition. He turned his head and looked at Zinky Zen. The girl shook her head, indicating that she had never told Zinky Zen that Ningya King was dead. You two, stop looking at each other. I have known Ningya King for more than 20 years. We have been in the same class since kindergarten. I know her too well. Zinky Zen is not the kind of person who will suddenly collapse emotionally. Her restraint and depth make her temperament gentle and elegant. Her firm heart makes her not shaken at all when she sees Zinky Zen stubbornly choose the path of destruction. But at this time, when she heard about Ningya King's death, she was silent for a long time, lowered her head, holding the teacup in her hand, and the light-colored tea in the cup rippled. She actually told me when she left that she also felt that the previous series of actions were too smooth. The group of Changshan group was not that simple and should not be so unbearable. But there is no way. The opportunity is too good. Ningya King told me several times that the enemy is too powerful and she can't see any chance of winning. The best result is to perish together, but the opponent will only be damaged and not hurt at all. So many attempts and the death of so many companions have left Ninja King with no way out. She feels her own death, but feels that this is a good relief. If she wins, the world will be reborn. If she fails, then this world should be like this. Zinky Zen's eyes were shining with tears. Finally, after Ninja King's death, he told Zinky Zen the truth about Ninja King's departure. Zinky Zen listened to Zinky Zen's story without saying anything. She covered her eyes, tears flowed from her fingers, and the girl gritted her teeth and never cried out. She has accepted her sister's death. Revenge and grief are on her shoulders. She can no longer solve problems by crying like a child. Chapter 562 Outline. Zinan, Ninja King took away almost all of her strength. It was a gamble, a last chance to win before things were completely hopeless. Zinky Zen was undoubtedly a very rational person. She took a few deep breaths, her emotions gradually stabilized, and her voice no longer trembled. Now, she has failed, and all her accumulation has been wiped out in that gamble. Zinan, if you want revenge, you can only rely on yourself and the traveler next to you. At this time, Zinky Zen suddenly turned the topic to Gluo. She turned her head and looked at Gluo gently. Gluo frowned, a little inexplicably. Miss Zinky Zen, I'm just an ordinary person. I don't have that much power. Gluo, don't be so self-deprecating. You must be necessary for Miss Fu Xing to entrust crossing Ruo to you. Zinky Zen's voice at this moment was decisive and firm. She did not give Gluo a chance to quibble, but directly revealed her trump card. Gluo frowned, glanced around, and slowly closed his eyes. Ms. Shizuki Makoto, your intelligence and analytical skills are amazing. It's just a trick. I believed in Ninja King more blindly than any of you. In fact, I was more unwilling to believe her death than anyone else. Shizuki Makoto took out a tablet computer from the drawer of the tea table, unlocked the electronic lock with his fingerprint, and then handed it to Gluo. I apologize for my intrusion, but Zingruo hasn't woken up yet, and I was worried, so I checked her condition. I have the same worry. Gluo took the computer without showing any negative emotions. After all, compared to him, Crossing Ruo should be more familiar with crossing Kizen. After Fu Xing handed crossing Ruo to me, she went to stop the pursuers. Gluo, there is no need to do this. Crossing Kizen suddenly raised her hand and interrupted Gluo's words. She also felt her own presumptuousness, so she pressed her fingers on the table and her tone began to become heavier. Gluo, the reason why I didn't use a respectful title to you is that I hope the distance between us will not be so far. This is the first time we meet, and you don't know me very well. It's normal to be wary of me. But, Mr. Gluo, I hope you understand that I'm not your enemy, and we are not resisting those power struggles and intrigues in the bureau. All we do is to survive, just survive. Gluo, I don't know your past, and I don't intend to understand it. Now, your appearance here is by no means accidental. I hope we can fight side by side. In this era, every companion is precious. These words of Zinky Zen were obviously from the heart. The situation she understood and faced was far from what Gluo could imagine. The Changshan group was too huge, and its tentacles extended to every aspect of the world. Spies and subversion were almost everywhere. And Gluo, as a person trusted by Fu Xing, and even entrusted to crossing Ruo, was absolutely trustworthy. In such a desperate situation, Zinky Zen, even if he was a trustworthy person, was the most precious fighting force. Gluo, we can trust each other, we can hide things, or we can be honest. How to get along depends entirely on you. To put it bluntly, we have goals and tasks that the other party doesn't know about. We just need to trust each other and don't confess everything about ourselves. Is this for confidentiality? Gluo heard the meaning of Zinky Zen's words. She didn't know how many betrayals and sellouts she had experienced. In the end, the rule set was that everyone kept their own tasks confidential, helped each other, but completed them separately. Gluo, if you need help, just tell us what you need us to do. You don't have to confess your purpose. Crossing Kizen didn't even ask Gluo, and he just treated him as one of his own. Gluo nodded without being hypocritical. I understand. I may be in danger next, so crossing Ruo GLUO, crossing RUO must be by your side. Because Fu Xing handed crossing RUO to you, then only you can accomplish the goal. In the end, who will protect crossing RUO is not decided by you or me, but by Fu Xing. Crossing Kizen knew that GLUO's thinking had not yet changed, but in order to fight against the all-pervasive Changshan group, they could only develop in this way. Ning Yiking, Fu Xing, and others at the top of the organization were responsible for making plans, and then only they knew the whole picture. The rest was to assign tasks, and each of them only knew their own tasks. The entire battlefield looked like a huge chessboard, and the chess players used all their wisdom and strategies to try to win the overall victory and determine the outcome. This method is not good, but they have no choice. I understand. GLUO nodded, which was considered as an affirmation of Zinki Zen's opinion. This method is not bad. At least GLUO does not need to make up any excuses. He can just fight against Tuanga and Shenming with peace of mind. That's good GLUO. A journey of 1,000 miles will reveal a person's strength. You don't have to worry. We will always walk together in the future. Zinki Zen was obviously very satisfied with GLUO. She was a person who planned before acting. Although she accepted GLUO now, because of the situation, she was definitely not just filling in the gap. Zinki Zen's intuition told her that this young man would be very important, even more important than her existence. By the way, Miss Zinki Zen. GLUO, it's nice to call me Zen, sister. I need your help with something. GLUO is not a submissive person. Now that there is a force to borrow, of course he will not ignore it. I'm looking for a woman named Le Zengxia. If you have any news, let me know. Le Zengxia. Okay, I remember it. I will use all channels to find her. Zinki Zen took out a notebook and asked what the 3 characters of Le Zengxia were, and then wrote them down carefully. Sister Zen, there is no need to make a big fuss. Just look for her as fate dictates. There is no rush. GLUO picked up the tea that was already a little cold and drank it all. Zinki Zen didn't say much, just smiled and nodded, and poured him another cup. At this time, Zinki Zen was sitting next to her, feeling that the conversation between GLUO and Zinki Zen was a bit overwhelming. What's going on? How come with such a short contact and a few heartfelt words, the relationship between GLUO and Zinki Zen has made rapid progress? How come? It seems that they are closer to each other than to themselves. An impatient sense of crisis made Zinki Zen blush slightly. At this time, the girl's thoughts were in a mess, and her 2 hands were unconsciously twisted together. GLUO, I will help find it too. Chapter 563 Give up. Thank you. I'll take care of it. GLUO was not so polite to Zinki Zen. This simple answer made the girl happy. She twisted the cup with her fingers and drank 2 sips happily. Huff. Zinki Zen looked at Zinki Zen's strange expression and showed a nant-like smile on her face. She was burdened with Ning Yiking's last wish. She was under great pressure recently and couldn't sleep all night. But now, when Zinki Zen saw that there was someone like GLUO around Zinki Zen, she felt a little relieved. Since she got the news of Ning Yiking's death, Zinki Zen's heart was broken. She was obviously only in her early 30s, but she felt that she was old and her heart was too old to continue. Zinki Zen even had the intention of dying. She didn't have much nostalgia for this world. The only thing she cared about was Zinki Zen. GLUO, crossing RUO is now being taken care of by Jiang Zilan and Zhu Dangsha. You can take her back later. There is nothing wrong with crossing RUO's condition, and the reason why she has been sleeping should be her mother's fault. Okay, I'll go over later. GLUO was completely relaxed at this time. Crossing Kizen raised his hand to pour him tea, and GLUO did not pick up the cup again. Crossing Kizen was very satisfied with GLUO's attitude, and the sadness on his face faded a lot. GLUO, when Ning Yiking left, she almost drained all the power of the Wutang group. I can only barely maintain the current situation, and can't give Xinyan too much help, so I'll take the liberty to ask you to take care of her more. It's a small matter, let's make progress together. GLUO pretended not to hear the metaphor in Crossing Kizen's words, and took the responsibility directly. Crossing Kizen was shocked by Crossing Kizen's attitude, and waved his hands to argue. Sister Zen, I can take care of myself. I also know the situation of the group. I can do it myself. No, Zinayan, I think you misunderstood me. I'm not saying that I won't hand over the Huatang group to you, but at this time, Huatang is still too weak to stand on the opposite side of the Changshan group. Do you understand? How could Zinki Zen, who doesn't care about life and death, covet the property of the Huatang group? This is the last strength left by Ningyi King. She must consider Zinki Zinayan and leave a last way out. Moreover, even if the Huatang Chamber of Commerce really wants to declare war on the Changshan group, it will be fully recovered. Now it is so strong on the outside, but weak on the inside. I'm afraid it will be easily crushed to death, which is too stupid. Sister Zen, I understand. The Huatang Chamber of Commerce is related to the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of people. If I show up now, all these people will lose their families. I'd be crazy to die. Although Zinki Zinayan's mind was full of revenge, she still kept her rationality. She must have made a plan a long time ago, but she just hadn't had time to implement it. I plan to build up my power from scratch. Now I have already recruited the first elder, GLUO. Huatang Chamber of Commerce can provide financial and technical support. Don't do it yourself. You have made a plan. That's good. Zinki Zen was obviously very satisfied with Zinki Zinayan's growth. She almost watched her grow up and had long regarded her as her own sister. Now she found that the child who had always followed her in the past had finally grown up. She felt a little emotional and happy. Zinayan, GLUO, although I can't support you in terms of personnel, money, and technology are simple, especially money. You don't have to worry about it at all. You can have as much as you want. Zinki Zen never mentioned the issue of money, but now when she mentioned money, she did not hesitate, as if she was so poor that she only had money left, and she could take out as much as she needed. Sister Zen, you don't need too much, just give me 10 billion first. Zinki Zinayan is worthy of being a lady from a famous family. She is also very down to earth. She smiled shyly and asked for 10 billion, which made GLUO next to her dumbfounded. So rich. Okay. The bank account may not be safe. You choose a place and I will directly pull the equivalent gold over. Thank you. Sister Zen. Zinki Zinayan was probably the first time to ask Zinki Zen for money, so she was a little embarrassed. She didn't have much concept of money and didn't know how much to ask for, whether it would be enough in the future. If not, she would ask again in the future. Listening to the conversation between the two, GLUO on the other side was already stunned at this time. Degrees, this is simply rich and inhumane. By the way, Zinayan, my personal opinion, I think you can contact Jiang Zilin and others. Although Zinki Zen said that she couldn't help Zinki Zinayan too much, she would definitely give as much help and advice as possible for her plan. The abnormal resistance army formed by Jiang Zilin and Zhuge Dangsha must have been under her observation for a long time. Over the years, the organization funds of Jiang Zilin and Zhuge Dangsha have been provided free of charge by Ningyi King. I have observed these two children for a long time. They are not bad people, and now, they just happen to want to unite with us. You can have a good talk with them. Aren't Jiang Zilin and others the rebels? My sister also supports the rebels. Although Zinki Zinayan had some contact with Jiang Zilin and others, in her impression, they were just people Zinki Zen found to assist her. Unexpectedly, after a few turns, they turned out to be her own people. That's not the case. Although the so-called rebels are nominally rebelling against the rule of the government, their actions are actually not considered rebellion and uprising. There are all kinds of people in them, and there are not many good people. At this time, Zinki Zen pressed his finger on the tablet on the desktop, then opened the album, and showed GLUO and the others a photo. That was when Jiang Zilin and Zhuge Dangsha were still young. The two who had just graduated from college walked on the street, holding ice cream in their hands, their faces full of youthful radiance. Ningyi King funded them. In fact, it was all for Zhuge Dangsha. This girl is very talented in mechanical engineering. If it weren't for the lack of time, Ningyi King actually wanted to take her as a disciple. In order to give Zhuge Dangsha time to study and delve into research, Ningyi King provided them with funds free of charge, and often shared her research with Zhuge Dangsha, provided some simple help, and occasionally answered her questions, which was considered half a disciple. With this relationship, the two sides are quite close. These two children are not easy. I have observed them for so many years and I'm very satisfied with them. Before Ning Yiking left, she told me that if she died, then this Zhujiangxia would be the best source energy inscription technology researcher in the world. Zinki Zhen said at the end. Her tone was very serious. Obviously, she was hinting to Zinki Zhen to try to build a good relationship with these two people, especially Zhujiangxia, who was a talent that must be grasped. Chapter 564 Tentative. I understand. I'll go there later. Zinki Zhen was obviously frightened by Zinki Zhen's serious look. She also regarded this as Zinki Zhen's first test for her. Little did she know that all this had been arranged by Zinki Zhen. Jialuo sat next to him. His mouth twitched twice, and he barely held back his smile. Zinki Zhen had obviously communicated with Jiang Zilan. How could he not know that Jiang Zilan and Zhujiangxia wanted to surrender? Now she said this, in fact, to let Zinki Zhen lower her posture and make a better impression on the two. As for the rest, Zinki Zhen turned his head to look at Jialuo and nodded meaningfully. Jialuo, as the only deputy brought by Zinki Zhen, you must help her well. I will. Jialuo couldn't help laughing after all. Zinki Zhen didn't know what was going on. She looked confused and cute. That's good. I can rest assured. Zinki Zhen didn't know where his confidence came from. He trusted Jialuo, who was arranged by Fu Xining. To put it bluntly, her attitude towards Jialuo has already implied that she is entrusting him with a heavy responsibility, just like training a successor. I'm here for Hua Tang Group. You don't have to worry about the financial and logistics, and the fight against Changshen Group is left to you. Sister Zhen, please leave it to me. Miss Crossing Key Zhen, I will do my best. Crossing Key Xinyan and Jialuo did not hesitate, and directly accepted their tasks. Although their words were gentle, the meaning they represented was the immeasurable weight of life. It's great to be young. Crossing Key Zhen looked at Jialuo and the others with envy. She was still young and beautiful, but the experience and inner pain tortured her to the point of being overwhelmed. I'm just a disabled person, and cannot leave this Pure Land manor. Everything outside is up to you. No matter what, just don't regret it. Crossing Key Zhen seemed to be admonishing, or talking to herself. She stretched out her hand, and light green source power surged out of her body. The natural source power lingered in her palm for a moment, then circled around Crossing Key Xinyan, and took out something from her pocket. That was Ning Yiking's only relic, and it was also the heaviest thing that Fu Xining asked Jialuo to give to Ning Xinyan, a walnut-sized crystal, which was slowly dropped from mid-air into Crossing Key Zhen's hands by the source power. She held the crystal and slowly placed it on her forehead, as if she was feeling something. A strange thing happened at this time. Crossing Key Zhen obviously did not make any movements, but the crystal in her hand seemed to be activated and lit up a faint light. Ning Yiking, you are gone. Even if thousands of years pass, there will never be another person like you in this world. Zinki Zhen spread out his palm, and the walnut-sized crystal was like a broken cocoon, gradually cracking, and the outer seal fell off bit by bit, revealing the true appearance of the things inside. It was a deep purple gem, the size of a pigeon egg, which seemed to be filled with purple fine sand. These sparse particles kept flowing, like an endless storm. Zilan, this is the legacy Ning Yiking gave you, and it is also the destiny she fought for. Its name is Heaven's Blade. Zinki Zhen clearly has the ability to unlock the seal of the gem, but she has no intention of taking it for herself. Instead, she gently pushed the gem and let it fly in front of Zinki Zhen. Heaven's Blade. Zinki Zhen looked at the barely gorgeous gem and stretched out her right hand a little uneasily. The floating gem in the air, as if it felt something, slowly fell on the back of her hand. Then, the gemstone named Heaven's Blade merged into her flesh and blood. No, it wasn't merged, but the gemstone embedded from the back of her hand, devouring her original flesh and blood, and became as if it grew in her body. Naturally, as if it had been like this since Zingzaki Zilan was born. The girl looked at the gemstone that merged into her body in panic. The gemstone, which was originally the size of a pigeon egg, only half was exposed outside, and the other half had completely parasitized in her flesh and blood. It's okay, don't be afraid, your sister is the same. Zingzaki Zhen obviously knew about this situation a long time ago. Ningyi King entrusted her with almost everything, no matter how big or small, and left all the affairs after her death to her. Alas. I don't know if it is right or wrong to give you such a divine weapon. Xingzi Qishan shook his head helplessly, took out a specially made white fingerless glove from the side, and placed it in front of Xingzi Qierita. This is a glove customized by your sister. Your hands are about the same size, so you should be able to wear them. Yeah, they fit quite well. Xingzi Qierita put on the gloves, and found that they were indeed specially made. The decoration on them just completely covered the gems exposed on the back of her hand without affecting her daily life. Zion, in the future, try not to take off your gloves. Only the three of us need to know about the existence of Heaven's Blade, Metal Rang. If anyone else knows about it, they must die. Do you understand? I understand. No, you don't understand. Hoshizaki Makoto looked at Hoshizaki Zion seriously. She had clearly given an affirmative answer, but Hoshizaki Makoto still stared at her with a solemn expression. Heaven's Blade, Metal Rang, is our last hope and the only weapon in the world that can kill gods. The Changshan group will not care how many people die for it. If the deaths of millions or tens of millions of people can make it lose its effectiveness, then the Changshan group will never be stingy. It exists like this. Do you understand? I will remember it in your heart. Hoshizaki Zion stopped laughing at this time. She gave an answer, as if she had sworn an oath. Only then did Hoshizaki Makoto relax his expression, and was no longer so serious. Zion, I'm sorry to let you bear such a heavy responsibility, but there is no other way. The future of this world can only be entrusted to you. Zinki Zen pursed her lips, her eyes full of expectation and apology. She knocked on the table, and the 2 pots of spider plants beside her suddenly fell down, revealing a passage on the side. Go, people who still have hope, fight with all your strength, so that there will be no regrets in the future. As the Gravikeeper of this world, I will always guard the last dignity of our human beings. Zinki Zen didn't wait for Jialuo and Zinki Zilan to say anything. He just waved his hand, and the stool, where Jialuo and Zinki Zinan were sitting, unfolded the hidden mechanism, like a small car on a slide, moving forward along the track, and entering the hidden passage. Ningyi King, our future may have lost hope, but as you said, the so-called destiny must be the future we choose. That's all. Chapter 565 The Past. Click, 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 click. The sound of gears fitting together kept ringing around. Jialuo sat upright on the chair and let the mechanism set by Zinki Zen take him into a train. Before, Jialuo was still wondering why such a large manor didn't even need an electric car. Now, Zinki Zen's arrangement completely broke Jialuo's doubts. There were no electric cars on the ground in the entire manor, but there were underground. It is estimated that the secret passage about 5 or 6 meters underground can only accommodate 1 car. There is no driver in the car. Only Jialuo and Zinki Zinan sat in it blankly, and were sent away from the manor according to the set route. Zinan, didn't you say that Miss Zinki Zen was a very serious person? Why does it feel like a very gentle person? Jialuo had completely relaxed at this time. Although Zinki Zinan's appearance gave people a stunning feeling, she was not the kind of person who would put pressure on people. On the contrary, when facing Jialuo, Zinki Zinan would be inexplicably weak. Just like at this moment, she was obviously sitting next to Jialuo, but she was very restrained, and put her legs and hands together. Maybe I was too stupid in the past. Zinki Zinan touched her gloved right hand, and her expression was a little complicated. Receiving so much information in one day made her, a girl who was just 18 years old, a little uneasy and confused. After all, Zinki Zen's words were too heavy. Zinki Zinan was just thinking about revenge, but Zinki Zen's words all revealed his concerns about the world and hundreds of millions of lives. Zinan, don't put too much pressure on yourself, just do what you can. If you have this uneasy mood, you might as well think about how to negotiate with Jiang Zilan later. Jialuo wanted to relieve the pressure on Zinki Zinan, but he didn't expect that Zinki Zinan was just uneasy about things far away. But when Jialuo said this, Zinki Zinan began to have a stomachache for the big scene in front of her. Jialuo, someone like Jiang Zilan who founded an organization alone must be very powerful. I remember that everyone called her a general. Is she a hero? PFFT. Hero, Zinan. You really have a rich imagination. GLUO recalled his impression of Jiang Zilan. She was obviously a reckless man who didn't like to think and was always willing to go straight. The reason why she was supported was probably because she led by example, always cared about everyone in her heart, and cherished every partner. Don't worry, I have met Jiang Zilan. She is a very easy to get along person. I think you should pay more attention to Zhujiangxia, that's a great master. Zhujiangxia, she seems to like mechanical engineering very much. I remember that I have a document given by my sister, and she should be very interested. Zinke Zilan suddenly remembered a document that Ning Yiking had given her recently. At that time, Ning Yiking specifically reminded her that this was a very important document, and any scientific researcher would regard it as a treasure. Absolutely not. Give it to someone you don't trust casually. Ning Yiking's arrangement? GLUO looked at Zinke Zilan's thoughtful expression, and he had already understood in his heart. Although everything Zinke Zilan did now came from her heart, it was also the result of Ning Yiking's guidance. As the star spirit of this world, the power founded by Ning Yiking must be a behemoth. Zinke Zilan wants to take over these relationships and become the existence of replacing Ning Yiking. She must go through various trials. Don't worry, Zilan, as long as you are still on the front line of resisting the Changshan group, I will be your most trusted comrade in arms. Why? Zinke Zilan certainly trusts GLUO in her heart, but for some reason, she suddenly stared at GLUO with purple eyes shining. Because I have a reason not to retreat. GLUO has now accepted Zinke Zilan, or the power she represents. After all, it is really comfortable to get along with them. You don't need to find reasons for your actions, you just need to give them answers. Is that so? Then I also have a reason not to retreat. Zinke Zilan's voice suddenly lowered, but her tone was particularly firm. GLUO turned his head and looked at her in surprise, while the young girl who had just reached adulthood looked at GLUO without retreating, as if to tell him that what she wanted to express was what he wanted. Beep. At this moment, the tram suddenly made a light sound, and it turned into an empty room and stopped. We've arrived at our destination. GLUO hurriedly jumped off the car and stretched his body in a pretentious manner. Zinke Zilan followed him out of the car with a smile of victory on her face, but she didn't say anything more. GLUO, I've been here before, follow me. Zinke Zilan has already returned to her previous indifferent appearance, as if it wasn't her who just sent a straight bull. GLUO looked around and followed her silently. The two have now left the manor. After turning left and right and leaving the secret passage, they saw grapevines stretching like waterfalls in front of them. Is this a vineyard? Although GLUO had been to many places in the past, he had never seen a garden of grapevines. Unfortunately, it was not the right season and the grapes could not be eaten. This is a subsidiary of Huatang Group. It mainly sells wine and sells well. Zinke Zilan had been here many times, so she only looked around and found the way to leave. GLUO followed her and asked a lot of questions along the way, which was considered to be a knowledge. Miss, the car has been arranged. At the end of the vineyard, there were already subordinates waiting. GLUO did not even have the opportunity to taste the wine before getting on the highway. Zilan, where are we going? GLUO was now dizzy and only recognized that the surroundings were in the suburbs, but the specific location and direction were completely dark. Go back to the hotel we left before. You left Xingruo there. Zinke Zilan was quite resentful at this time. She naturally knew Xingruo, but GLUO carried Xingruo into the door at that time and wrapped Lali Long like a dumpling. No one else knew whether it was a man or a woman. What's even more outrageous is that GLUO also lied to make Zinke Zilan think that GLUO really worked hard for the benefit. When GLUO came back and confessed in the car, Zinke Zilan realized that after all this time, GLUO had been thinking more cunningly than anyone else, just taking advantage of the situation and getting all the benefits. Oh, I'm a little hungry. Let's treat Jiang Zilan and the others to dinner later. After all, we will work together in the future, and chatting at the dinner table can also make us closer. Chapter 566 People's Heart. Many years ago, you had a pair of clear eyes running, like a spring lightning. Jiang Zilan woke up from the dream in a daze, reached out and touched the side of her body, grabbed the ringing mobile phone, and moved the screen to her eyes. This is... Jiang Zilan was a little confused, but when he saw the name of the caller, he immediately woke up, took 2 deep breaths, and then answered the phone. Ms. Zinky Zen, your opinion on the proposal mentioned before is... okay. No problem. I welcome it very much. You know me, I don't have so many complicated thoughts. Yes, Zhuge Dangsha is next to me. Do you want her to answer the phone? Okay, I'll relay these words to her. We are in the hotel, and can be at any time. Jiang Zilan's voice at this time was full of energy, and it was completely unimaginable that she was seriously injured and dying a few hours ago. This call from Zinky Zen soon came to an end. Jiang Zilan reaffirmed her previous answer again, and then hung up the phone in farewell. Zhuge Dangsha, you young man have no moral integrity. I'm not good at this kind of communication, but you let me do it. Really? As the leader of an organization, you are lazy and evasive. You just need to be beaten. Zhuge Dangsha was sitting on the sofa not far away at this time, looking at Xingruo's physical examination results with great interest, and making surprised sounds from time to time. Dangsha, what are you doing? You ignore me. I almost died, and now I just recovered from my injuries, and ran out to do reception. I'm so miserable. Jiang Zilan's eyes were dark and lifeless, as if she had been abused and tortured, but Zhuge Dangsha on the other side was used to it, and didn't even say a word of comfort. Jiang Zilan, stop pretending. I know the true healing ability of Misaka Masaru. No matter how you pretend, you can't escape your responsibility. Zhuge Dangsha had already turned to the last page of the information. After reading all the documents, she turned her head and glanced at the lolly dragon who was sleeping soundly on the side. She wanted to observe the real thing carefully. Hey, Zhuge Dangsha, we have been friends for so many years. Do you have any sympathy? You. Hey, don't touch that little girl. Jialuo will misunderstand me when he comes back later. I won't take the blame for you. Jiang Zilan also knows Zhuge Dangsha. This close friend who likes to study and think, likes to pass the blame and survive. He is very curious, but his fighting ability is terrible. If he is not careful, he will be beaten. Now Zhuge Dangsha grabbed the air twice with her palm, which was considered to be a fantasy. She knew the news of Jialuo's return a long time ago, and she didn't dare to make any misunderstandings now. Jiang Zilan, how is it? What did our big money sponsor say? It's still the same reply as before, asking us to confirm our idea. If you don't regret it, we will assist Xingza Kierita to expand the organization's operations. Jiang Zilan couldn't help but sigh when she said this, like a social animal who was discovered by his boss for slacking off and now has to work overtime. Dangsha, to be honest, I'm really tired. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to travel around, see the scenery around the world, and be a salted fish. But, I can't abandon the people under my command. They are all working with us with their heads hanging on their waists. Now we get off the boat and run away. What will happen to them? Xingza Kierita is only 18 years old. This kid still has hatred in him. He might just rush forward with a bloody head. I can stay and take care of him. If something happens, I can save some room. But I'm afraid that something like this will happen again. Jiang Zilan was not the kind of person who craved for power. Over the years, she had gone from having nothing to gaining a foothold in Binchuan City. The blood and tears she had gone through along the way made her very tired, but also very reluctant to leave. Dangsha, what should we do? What else can we do? Don't you know it clearly? Zhuge Dangsha threw down the tablet in her hand, walked to her friend's side, and poked her forehead twice with her fingers. I was a young person with a promising future back then, but you pulled me in to join the revolution. Now I'm afraid to go out. What else do you want? What else can you do? When I saw your injuries before, I thought you were going to die. But now, Misaka Masamune just healed your injuries, and you hurried over. We all know why. Jiang Zilan, the two of us are completely peasants. Managing an organization of 2 or 3,000 people is already the best we can. The situation in Binchuan City is very complicated. We, who are weak in arms and legs, will die. Even for the sake of the people below, we must make a choice. Zujdangsha had thought about this many times. She wanted to give up, but could they really leave? The name of Jiang Zilan, the criminal, was well known in Binchuan City. The two ordinary graduates who were silly in the past had already been on the blacklist of countless people and could not return to their normal lives. Trouble, the rebels. Kikuchi Kengo, that bastard. Jiang Zilan seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help pulling her hair madly. She was a person who liked to talk about morality, and she felt hair all over her body when she thought about the troubles that were coming. More than a year ago, they had built the rebel branch in Binchuan City in a decent shape and even relied on Jiang Zilan's name to develop into a climate. And that Kikuchi Kengo was transferred from the rebel headquarters under this situation. Of course, the reason at the headquarters was good, saying that they were not fighting for power, but just providing weapons and equipment and struggle experience. Kengo Kikuchi and the group of people he brought with him were only guides and assistants, and they were considering Jiang Zilan and the others. Anyway, this was said in a high-sounding manner. Zujdangsha had actually blocked this kind of interference several times before. But it was precisely because of too many rejections that Kengo Kikuchi's joining became something that could not be stopped. After all, they were known as the Resistance Army at the time. Moreover, they were able to gain a foothold in Hamakura City with people, and the Resistance Army did provide a lot of protection, both tangible and intangible. As for Kengo Kikuchi, in general, he was not a bad person, but he was a little gloomy in mind, always considering too many things, and had a great desire for power. At the beginning, Kengo Kikuchi certainly had the idea of seizing power, but Zujdangsha was obviously more skilled. After being held back a few times, Kengo Kikuchi became honest. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 567 Turbulence. However, Kengo Kikuchi is a rather sinister person. If he can't be tough, he will start to sugarcoat his words. In general, his internal affairs are not bad. He is dedicated to taking care of the staff and improving everyone's life, which is indeed effective. In addition, Kengo Kikuchi has the support of the resistance headquarters, and he really provides a lot of benefits to the branch, which makes some people who are easy to be won over gradually gather under him. In Jiang Zilan's view, these are nothing. If Kengo Kikuchi can really treat his subordinates well, it doesn't matter if she abdicates. But the most disgusting thing is that Kengo Kikuchi knows that the backbone of the branch supports Jiang Zilan, so he pretends to cooperate fully and only fights the deputy. But on various specific matters, he always pretends to be objective, incarnates as a defeatist counselor, and always talks about this risk and that loss. In short, he just shows that I feel sorry for the staff and don't want casualties. We should study everything carefully and can't make decisions so hastily. Jiang Zilan was of course not satisfied with Kikuchi Kengo's performance. She simply ignored him and implemented the plan she had made with Zujdangsha. Of course there were successes and benefits, and Kikuchi Kengo was not stingy with praise, but every time at the summary meeting, he always cried like a chicken and a bird, pretending to commemorate the casualties, which was disgusting. If the plan failed, it would be even more terrible. Kikuchi Kengo would not blame Jiang Zilan, but would always say it was a pity that he was incompetent and could not help everyone. If the preparations were more sufficient, the plan would definitely succeed, and the losses would definitely be minimized. Damn it, rebellion is not a dinner party. It is normal for people to die. You are shaking the morale of the army. Jiang Zilan naturally saw Kikuchi Kengo's plan, and of course she was very angry, but if she really took action against him, it would be very hurtful. After all, no matter what, Kikuchi Kengo improved everyone's life, and was good to everyone. He was just a sad person who died, and it was not a sin. In the end, Jiang Zilan simply ignored him, and let him do whatever he wanted. Anyway, she was on the side of absolute advantage, and she was strong without desire, so she was not afraid of him. But the problem happened when Jiang Zilan thought that Kikuchi Kengo was already in a stable situation. During that time, Zhuge had long discovered that Kikuchi Kengo was winning over those who were inclined to the Resistance Bureau, and this situation was even fueled by Zhuge. In the past few years in Bunchuan City, Zhuge has completely seen the face of the Resistance headquarters, and she has already made plans to leave. Even several times, Zhuge has communicated with Ning Yiking, but Ning Yiking refused because the time was not right. But Ning Yiking was not perfunctory. She planned to let Jiang Zilan and Zhuge assist Xingzaki Zilan to form a new force in Binchuan City. Zhuge did not tell Jiang Zilan this information, but made arrangements and plans in secret, and Kikuchi Kengo also noticed it, so he accelerated the plan. Until last month, Kengo Kikuchi was finally ready. He directly launched a storm at the meeting, holding the information and requirements sent by the headquarters, and wanted to lead his group of people to charge forward and make a big wave. Naturally, the plan was rejected by Jiang Zilan, because cooperating with the Rotten Dog Gang was tantamount to seeking the skin of a tiger. Cooperating with evil people to do good things will turn good things into bad things. Kengo Kikuchi's plan seems good, but if there is a problem, it will collapse, and it is impossible to get a good result. But what Jiang Zilan didn't expect was that Zhuge spoke up to support Kengo Kikuchi's plan and finally implemented his plan. Kengo Kikuchi and Zhuge each had their own calculations, but tacitly excluded Jiang Zilan. Kengo Kikuchi wanted to take advantage of the situation, do something big, and put up his own flag. Even if he couldn't suppress Jiang Zilan, he had to compete with her. Zhuge understood Jiang Zilan and couldn't tell Jiang Zilan, a general who valued friendship too much, about her plan to expel all the people who were inclined to the resistance army. Although Jiang Zilan doesn't like to think, she is not a fool. When everything is irreversible, she can only try to persuade Kikuchi Kengo, the person in charge, but in the end she only gets perfunctory. So Jiang Zilan found Zhuge and wanted her to think of a way, but she was rejected by her. Of course, after Jiang Zilan knew Zhuge's idea, she did not rebuke or deny it, but just did not approve of her way of execution. That night, the two had a big fight, which was a rare disagreement. However, everyone underestimated Jiang Zilan. Even Zhuge, who thought he knew Jiang Zilan best, did not understand her stubbornness. So, when the plan started, Kikuchi Kengo was full of confidence and used the power he had won over to make a gamble. Jiang Zilan left a letter, handed over the position of leader to Zhuge, and secretly left the base. Later, the plan failed. Kikuchi Kengo was not trusted by the right person, and the whole plot became a joke. The people he recruited were killed or injured. He was completely disgraced and fled back to the base in a panic. His mind was full of Jiang Zilan's apology. The girl named Jiang Zilan, however, stepped onto the battlefield that was doomed to fail alone. She was not going to contribute to Kikuchi Kengo's plan, nor did she want to gather the few remaining troops to leave as Zhuge thought. She chose to fight and chose revenge. Jiang Zilan was a straightforward person. She just felt that too many of her subordinates died here. As their general, she had to stand on the same battlefield with them and avenge them. Things are unpredictable. Jiang Zilan's reckless and stupid decision made her meet Gluo, and they fought side by side by accident. She was saved by him. Whether it was fate or the closure of the world line, Jiang Zilan has now made up her mind to agree with Zhuge's idea to expel Kikuchi Kengo and those who were circling around him. However, Zhuge asked Jiang Zilan to kill Kengo Kikuchi directly. But after Kengo Kikuchi returned to the base, he knelt on the ground in public and cried bitterly and asked for forgiveness from everyone. It was miserable enough. After all, after being a comrade in arms for more than a year, Kengo Kikuchi had his right and wrongs, and he had made a lot of contributions. Jiang Zilan really didn't know if killing him was the right thing to do. Jiang Zilan, Kengo Kikuchi didn't do anything wrong, but he chose the wrong route. As a deterrent and warning, he must not live. Compared to Jiang Zilan, Zhuge was really too murderous. She was an extremely rational person. It was precisely because of this rationality that she didn't expect Jiang Zilan to make such a stupid choice that almost led to her death. This time, you and I have different opinions again. I suggest that we let a more neutral person decide his life or death. How about it? Chapter 568 Temporarily. Dangsha. How can we let outsiders handle such a matter involving human lives? Jiang Zilan knew Zhuge Dangsha too well. The more neutral person she mentioned was obviously Xingzi Qianrita from the sponsor side, who was also their new leader. If you ask Xingzi Qianrita about this matter, even if Xingzi Qianrita has no such intention, Zhuge Dangsha will use her eloquence to sentence Kakashi Kango to death. Outsider? How is he an outsider? Can Xingzi Qianrita be an outsider? Zhuge Dangsha also had a convincing argument, so at this time, facing the angry Jiang Zilan, she directly chose to stand up and look at her without dodging. Click. At this moment, the door of the hotel room was suddenly pushed open, and Jialuo walked into the room. Looking at the two people who were on the verge of a fight, he tilted his head in confusion. What's wrong? Did I interrupt you two from discussing national affairs? No. Jiang Zilan stood up in a panic. She had never expected that Jialuo and Xingzi Zilan would rush over so quickly. For a moment, her mind was a little disconnected. On the other side, Zhuge Dangsha had already planned the current situation. She turned her graceful figure. Her eyebrows and eyes were full of enthusiasm. Mr. Jialuo, Miss Xingzi Zilan, Jiang Zilan, and I were just discussing something about the future of the organization, and we were just thinking about asking for your opinions. Now, it's not quite appropriate yet. Jialuo led Xingzi Zilan in with a smile on his face. Zhuge Dangsha had a bright smile before, but when she saw Xingzi Zilan standing naturally beside Jialuo, the expression on her face was also stunned for a moment. But it was only a moment. Soon, Zhuge Dangsha returned to normal and was very enthusiastic to make tea for the two. Zhuge Dangsha, stop making tea. I just drank a lot of water and I'm hungry now. Let's go eat. Jialuo picked up Crossing Ruo from the sofa. Lali Long was still sleeping soundly, sleeping sweetly and quietly. Crossing Qizinyan came over and carefully checked Crossing Ruo. After confirming that she was okay, she was relieved. Jialuo, if you didn't say it, I wouldn't have noticed it. I'm really hungry too. Zhuge Dangsha looked at Zhuge Dangsha's silent appearance, letting Jialuo take care of everything. She didn't show any emotion, but her attitude towards Jialuo was completely different from before. Then let's go. Jialuo seemed to be fine. He walked out with Crossing Ruo in his arms. The waiter was waiting outside the door and led the four people to the restaurant. On the way, Jialuo gave Zhuge Dangsha a look. There was no word between the two, but Zhuge Dangsha tacitly came to Crossing Qizinyan and chatted with her. Although Jialuo was walking in front, he slowed down his pace and walked in a row with Jiang Zilan. Jiang Zilan, your injury is recovering too fast. Jialuo and Jiang Zilan had fought side by side before, and he was very fond of her straightforward character, while Jiang Zilan was a little weak towards Jialuo, perhaps because she still felt guilty. Jialuo, thank you for your hard work before. I'm glad you're okay. As a participant, Jiang Zilan was suspected of hypocrisy when she said this afterwards, but she was a person who said what she thought, and her expression was very serious, as if Jialuo needed to apologize, she would apologize immediately at her desk. Okay, Jiang Zilan, don't be so upset. In my memory, you are not such a person. Xingzi Zilan came here this time. You also know what she wants to do. Give me a push. I also want to get involved. After confirming that Xingzi Zilan and Zhuge Dangsha were chatting smoothly, Jialuo no longer paid attention to the two of them and turned to chat with Jiang Zilan formally. Jiang Zilan only noticed that Jialuo and Xingzi Zilan had a good relationship, but she didn't think that the two were in collusion. So at this time, Jiang Zilan thought that Jialuo also wanted to take a position in the newly established organization. She actually didn't know anything about such political affairs and personnel arrangements, and she had to rely on Zhuge Dangsha. Jialuo, I dare not guarantee it, but I absolutely support you. That's enough. Jialuo made an okay gesture, and his confident look surprised Jiang Zilan. It's just a pity that Jialuo didn't mean to explain, but followed the waiter and walked into the reserved restaurant. Although Jialuo was walking in front, he did not choose to sit in the main seat, but chose the seat to the right of the main seat. After he sat down, a waiter came over and wanted to take Crossing Ruo to the next door, but was stopped by Jialuo waving his hand. Just lift the bed over here and put it over there. Remember to make the quilt. GLUO always acted careless to Jiang Zilan and others, but in fact, when GLUO was serious, the power of the dragon bloodline was extremely terrifying. GLUO just said a serious sentence, and the waiters in the room were frightened. Then they even forgot to reply, and hurried to prepare the mattress. At this time, Zinke Zilan and Zhuge Dangsha also came in. Zinke Zilan was signaled by GLUO to sit in the main seat, while on the other side, Jiang Zilan sat opposite GLUO. When GLUO sat down, on the left hand side of the main seat, order dishes, order dishes. I haven't had a big meal for a long time. Zhuge Dangsha took the opportunity to sit next to Jiang Zilan. At this time, the personality she showed was almost the opposite of her previous coldness. The waiter handed the menu to Zinke Zilan, but Zinke Zilan smiled and handed it to Zhuge Dangsha. Zhuge Dangsha, I don't know what your taste is. You can order a few dishes you like first. No, I can eat anything. Zhuge Dangsha didn't expect Zinke Zilan to hand her the menu directly. This meal was not ordinary. Every move during the meal had a deep meaning. Zhuge Dangsha understood that this was Zinke Zilan expressing her respect and attention to them again, but she didn't take the menu directly and order dishes carelessly. Let GLUO order first. He has worked hard today and should be rewarded. The expression on Zhuge Dangsha's face looked very natural, but with this compliment, she naturally handed over the meaningful task of ordering first to GLUO. That's true. Zinke Zilan smiled and nodded and handed the menu to GLUO. GLUO was not polite either. This kind of show of respecting the wise and humble is enough once. Too much is hypocrisy and will make people disgusted. So, GLUO didn't hesitate to order 7 or 8 dishes that interested him, and then handed the menu to Jiang Zilan. Jiang Zilan, you know Zhuge Dangsha's taste. Order everything you like. Order more. The rich man has money. Oh. Okay. Compared to Zhuge Dangsha, Jiang Zilan was much easier to fool, so she didn't think too much, and directly opened the menu to start ordering. Chapter 569 Expand. After Jiang Zilan ordered a bunch of her favorite foods, she also specifically asked Zhuge Dangsha what she wanted to eat. Zhuge Dangsha rolled her eyes helplessly and just said whatever. It was not until this time that Jiang Zilan felt that the atmosphere at the table was a little wrong, but she didn't know what was going on or how to solve it, so she could only bite the bullet and finish ordering the dishes and handed the menu to Zinke Zilan. The menu turned around and then returned to Zinke Zilan's hands. It was obviously just ordering a dish, but somehow, Zinke Zilan, who was sitting in the main seat, also showed the boldness of the host at this time. I looked around and couldn't think of what to eat, so let's have a portion of everything on the menu and try it together. Okay, we'll prepare it right away. The waiter who took the dishes was also frightened by Zinke Zilan's generosity. She turned around and ran out of the door, probably to explain something. At this time, Zinke Zilan's words swept away the choices of the other 3 people before, and perfectly included their preferences, like thunder in silence, setting the tone of this meal. She sat in the main seat, she was the one who paid, and she wanted to be the one in charge. Faced with Zinke Zilan's decision, which could be called overbearing, GLUO, Jiang Zilan, and Zhuge Dangsha looked at each other, and tacitly acknowledged Zinke Zilan's words. So, everything was settled. Sir, the bed is ready. At this time, the waiter that GLUO had instructed before came over. GLUO looked over and found that they had moved the bed prepared for crossing RUO, so GLUO left his seat and settled long not far from the dining table. When GLUO returned to his seat, he seemed not to notice the change in the atmosphere in the field, and smiled and changed the subject. Zhuge Dangsha, I almost forgot what you and Jiang Zilan were arguing about just now. You were so excited. Oh, you asked the right question. This is really a very important matter. Zhuge Dangsha set the tone before Jiang Zilan wanted to speak. Then she told the whole thing almost without hiding anything. The adjective for Kikuchi Kango can even be described as venomous. This person is really too much. GLUO pretended to be very interested, but he tacitly followed the inclination expressed by Zhuge Dangsha and continued the script. Just now, Zhujiangxia wanted to talk about this matter to Gluo, but Gluo shirked that it was not the right time, but now he took the initiative to bring it up, which shows that the relationship between the four has changed. Before, when they were in the guest room, the relationship between the four could only be said to be acquaintances, with some connection, but they were not subordinate to each other, and they talked about everything from a position of no connection. But now it is different. Xingzaki Zilan has basically determined the position of the leader. As the only person brought in by Xingzaki Zilan, Gluo's position cannot be bad. If Gluo said something too much about a matter or a person, and he said the same thing as Zhujiangxia, Jiang Zilan basically had no chance of turning the tables. Gluo is right, this person really crossed the line. Xingzaki Zilan sat in the main seat, listening to Zhujiangxia and Gluo's speeches, without rashly intervening, until the matter became clear. She set the tone. Xingzaki Zilan's words crossed the line, not only agreeing with Gluo's opinion, showing the intimacy and connection between the two, but also giving Zhujiangxia a face, and at the same time using Zhujiangxia's hand to put pressure on Jiang Zilan. Okay. Jiang Zilan knew that there was no room for reversal when she heard Xingzaki Zilan's comments, so she simply agreed. Jiang Zilan, you don't have to feel sorry. It's much better to shave off a black sheep like Kakashi Kango than to keep him as a time bomb. It's for the future. When Gluo spoke again, he had already determined Kakashi Kango's fate. Facing the three people standing on the same side, Jiang Zilan did not argue much, but nodded directly. Then, let's do this. Jiang Zilan, you don't have to be so embarrassed. I will help you solve the problem of Kakashi Kango. Gluo even asked Jiang Zilan's opinion, and took the responsibility directly. Jiang Zilan nodded, agreeing with Gluo's decision. Zhujiangxia was shocked by the meaning of Gluo's words. She looked at the water in the cup, paused for a moment, and turned to Gluo. Gluo, you are enforcing the family rules. How about doing the work of the disciplinary inspection committee in the future? No, I can't do this. Disciplinary inspection is too offensive. I'm soft-hearted, and I will definitely not do it well. The reason why Gluo wanted to execute Kakashi Kango was nothing more than thinking about the momentum of directly killing a high level of the resistance army, shocking the people in the organization, and avoiding some unnecessary trivialities and troubles. But Zhujiangxia misunderstood. She thought that the two airborne big men, Xingzaki Zilan and Gluo, were going to grab power directly, and the position where Gluo was assigned was a sensitive node like the disciplinary inspection committee. What is the disciplinary inspection committee? It is directly under the highest leader of the organization, and is responsible for reviewing the corruption, violation of discipline, and crime of all personnel. In a small sense, it is an ancient censor, and in a big sense, it is an imperial envoy with a sword. Of course, it is also possible to say that it is an organization like Jinaiwei or Dongchang. If people in this position really want to stir up trouble, there will be a reason. It is not an exaggeration to say that there will be bloody storms. Zhujiangxia, who do you think I am? In order to fight against our common enemy, we should unite all forces that can unite. How can you think of splitting the masses and doing things that will make the relatives sad and the enemies happy? Gluo's position in the new organization was of course discussed with Xingzaki Zilan. The two had basically the same opinions, which could be regarded as a harmonious relationship. First, kick out all those who are inclined to the resistance army in the organization, clear up the internal hidden dangers, and then Gluo will take the lead in forming a new force, which will be completely in his own hands. Of course, all this is not a struggle for power, but a plan that Gluo and the others considered to have the least impact on Jiang Zilan. In this way, the troops that Jiang Zilan previously commanded will still be managed by her, and her position and power will basically not change. Those who are loyal to her should also be able to accept it easily. Gluo's creation of a new unit can also help him cultivate the loyalty of his subordinates. This will not cause resentment among others, and he can also hold the gun firmly, which can be said to be killing three birds with one stone. This plan is indeed good, at least it sounds good, but the actual implementation still depends on people. Chapter 570 Destiny. Xingzaki Zilan had already reached a tacit understanding with Gluo. Now that GLUO had spoken for her, she would not remain silent, but stated her position. Jiang Zilan, Zhujiangxia, don't worry, I'm not the kind of person who will destroy the bridge after crossing it. I have no ill will towards you. I'm still young, and not very sensible. I will need your care in the future. Zinki Zilan then reached out to open a bottle of white wine, stood up personally, and filled the glasses for Jiang Zilan, Zhujiangxia, and GLUO, and did not stop, even if anyone tried to stop her. We are not outsiders. We will probably work together for the rest of our lives. I'm just 18 this year and I have an endless hatred in my heart, so I may be extreme and inconsiderate. I need your guidance. Jiang Zilan, I have heard of your reputation as a criminal. Let me make it clear now. After the organizational integration is completed, all your current people will still be under your command. I will not move a single one. As for GLUO, let him form a new team by himself to see what he is capable of. As for Zhujiangxia, you will be in charge of research and development and logistics in the future. You will be directly independent and only responsible to me. No one else has the right to ask what you are doing, or what you want to do. Of course, I don't really care about this. I just hope you can use your wisdom to keep our people alive as much as possible. Xingzaki Zilan is worthy of being Ningyi King's sister after all. Although she has been in school all year round, she has been influenced by Ningyi King and Xingzaki Zen, and many of her words were just right, which surprised GLUO. This conversation was well spoken. It not only showed her humble attitude, but also divided the power between them. At the same time, she reiterated her respect and trust in the two of them. Awesome, really awesome. Ms. Xingzaki Zilan, we are sincere in joining you. Jiang Zilan is indeed a person who does not covet power, or she is strong enough for commanding so many subordinates. She did not enjoy the benefits of power, but the casualties made her very uncomfortable. So at this time, Jiang Zilan wanted to hand over all the subordinates to Xingzaki Zilan, which would not only make her feel relieved, but also express her sincerity. But what Jiang Zilan didn't expect was that Xingzaki Zilan directly waved her hand to reject her, and gave her a serious reason. Sister Zilan, do you think that Changshan group can be defeated by me or anyone else who is doing it alone? Okay. Jiang Zilan really wanted to give up her position and be a brave man who rushed to the front line, but Xingzaki Zilan's advice to her left Jiang Zilan speechless. On the other hand, Zhujiangxia was sitting on the Diote. She was obviously very satisfied with Xingzaki Zilan's arrangement, especially Xingzaki Zilan's decisiveness in handing over research and development and logistics to her, which even made Zhujiangxia look at her with new eyes. Miss Xingzaki Zilan, don't look at me, I obey the organization's arrangements. He Sister Dangsha, as long as you are satisfied. Xingzaki Zilan is only 18 years old this year, and the childishness that still remains on her body makes people think that she is not up to the task unconsciously, but with just a few words, Xingzaki Zilan has established her personality. Of course, all this was arranged by Ningyi King, supported secretly by Xingzaki Zen, and helped by GLUO, the dog-headed military strategist. But no matter what, Xingzaki Zilan did complete the steps of swallowing an elephant. Just with GLUO alone, she initially swallowed up an organization of 2,000 to 3,000 people. Moreover, she directly forged a feud with the rebels, and there will be some fighting in the future. Thump, thump, thump. At this time, the door of the restaurant was knocked, and waiters carrying plates of cold dishes came in one after another. In just a few breaths, the table was filled. Oh, the dishes are here. Eat, eat, eat. Don't be polite. Xingzaki Zilan is essentially a cold-natured lady, but at this time, she is forcing herself to become a mature boss. The girl picked up the chopsticks, ate a few bites of the vegetarian dishes, and then picked up the wine glass she poured, and stood up directly from the chair. Seeing Xingzaki Zilan's formal appearance, GLUO and the other two quickly stood up. The four of them drank the wine and their glasses together, and then when they sat down, the atmosphere became lively. The really important things have almost been said just now. The four people who fully exchanged opinions and went through some intrigues soon became partners. Of course, the four people have just been put together, and there must be mistakes in coordination, and even disagreements in concepts in the future. But there is no doubt that in just this meal, the four people are no longer on guard against each other, but have become companions who can go together. Not long after the cold dishes were served, the hotel's hot dishes were also served on the table. Zugdangsha and Zinkizinan, who were still a little restrained, also enjoyed this delicious meal quite boldly under the leadership of Gluo and Jiangzilan. Gluo originally said that he would not drink, or just a little bit, but what Gluo did not expect was that Jiangzilan could not help it once he touched the wine, and directly turned into a drunkard, and swept the other three. As a warrior at the peak of the 4th silver rank, Jiangzilan obviously has more than just good physical fitness. After she gets drunk, she is like a housewife. It is hard to imagine that she is the same person as before. There are benefits to drinking and chatting. At least Gluo, who has been under great pressure, finally put down the burden in his heart. Come on, Jiangzilan, drink. I'll accompany you. Let's not go home until we are drunk today. Gluo doesn't like drinking, but he likes this kind of tipsy feeling very much. There are not so many noisy thoughts, and he can be very safe and unrestrained. Okay, Gluo, this is a good man. I'll accompany you, and I will satisfy you today. Jiangzilan was not in a good mood either. Once a person's mood is bad, it is very easy to get drunk. Although she is a warrior at the peak of the 4th silver rank, her physical strength is not as good as Gluo. After drinking bottle after bottle of wine, the whole person has become fuzzy. On the contrary, Zugdangsha has not touched alcohol much in order to take care of Jiangzilan. She just drank 2 glasses with Zinkizinan, which is considered to have completed the final process. Zinkizinan, on the other hand, not only did not drink much, she even did not eat much. She listened quietly to Gluo and Jiangzilan's high-pitched talk during the meal, and occasionally responded. In this comfortable dinner, Gluo drank a lot of wine. The exact amount was unknown. Anyway, in the end, the waiter was a little afraid to bring wine, fearing that he would drink to death. And Gluo, also satisfied from being slightly tipsy to being slightly drunk, and finally fell into a deep sleep. He did not act crazy or vomit everywhere. Everything was just a carefree drunkenness. Chapter 571. Don't forget. Mori Sky 298 May 28, 521. The night before the morning stars had a deep sea-like tranquility. When the chaotic dream ended, Gluo suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the white ceiling. He had no thoughts in his head for a while. Gluo lay there in a daze for a long time. When he felt the coolness in the corners of his eyes, he realized that he had cried. At such an old age, you still miss home. Gluo moved the flesh of his cheeks. Although he looked indifferent, he was actually far from being as indifferent as he showed. Suddenly leaving the world he was familiar with and stepping onto a hopeless planet, Gluo faced everything alone. In fact, he just held back the loneliness and hesitation in his heart. In this respect, Zinkizinan's attitude still made Gluo let down his guard. At least in order to relieve the pressure, he dared to drink a lot of wine and got drunk directly without worry. In a way, it is also a kind of happiness for people to fall asleep without guarding themselves. Damn, I was almost seduced by Zinkizinan. Gluo wiped his face and got up from the bed. His coat was taken off and his things were not touched. On the chair in the bedroom, a set of brand new men's clothes was folded and neatly placed there, with a mobile phone on top and a note left. From the tone, it can be seen that it was written by Zinkizinan. I just saved her, so how can her favorability increase so much? Although Gluo and Zinkizinan had experienced hardships together, he naturally didn't have any thoughts in that regard. He was not a scumbag, so how could he fall in love with everyone he met? However, Gluo's silent refusal seemed to make Zinkizinan admire her. If this young lady who was just a confused test before, now she seems to have really had a good impression of Gluo. Sukinghan. Look at how much I love your boyfriend, and how mighty and unyielding he is. Although Gluo could say without hesitation that Sukinghan was better looking than Zinkizinan, but he also had to admit that Zinkizinan was just childish in appearance compared to Sukinghan, and her temperament was slightly inferior. Most of the girls GLUO knew were realm warriors, and the girls who had awakened their original talents actually looked far better than ordinary people, but only Xingzaki Xilan and Suqinghan could be said to be better than others. Suqinghan had an independent temperament. The brilliance tempered from pain and despair made her have a kind of beauty that was born to die. Xingzaki Xilan, on the other hand, had a wealthy life and cultivated the temperament of a young lady. Although she had experienced pain, Ning Yiqing really protected her very well. Her purity could not be blemish, and her temperament was like clear glass. Xingzaki Xilan GLUO fiddled with the note in his hand for a while, and then stuffed it into his pocket. This was their relationship, and it would be too rude to throw it away directly. Moreover, GLUO was very curious about Xingzaki Xilan. He could feel that Xingzaki Xilan should also be a realm warrior, but at most she was at the peak level of bronze rank I, and there might even be some shortcomings. However, Xingzaki Xilan's original talent should be quite powerful, otherwise she would be crushed when facing Changqiu and Qianli. Now everything is over. Looking at the whole plan, GLUO thought about it carefully and felt that Xingzaki Xilan's trump card must be in existence that absolutely crushes everything. Otherwise, Xingzaki Zen would not agree to Xingzaki Xilan's risk, let alone not preparing any protection for her. Even if it was to keep Huatang Chamber of Commerce out of the matter, it was completely unreasonable. The only explanation can only be that Xingzaki Xilan made a choice. She decided to reveal her trump card. Even if she paid a certain price, she had to get justice for Kuang Xinsu. Xingzaki Xilan's will finally convinced Xingzaki Zen. If GLUO had not appeared, everything might have gone smoothly. Xingzaki Xilan showed her true attitude and swept everything. After all, she is Ning Yiking's sister. How can it be that simple? GLUO first locked the door, then took off his clothes, and walked into the bathroom. After a simple rinse, GLUO soaked in the bathtub, and had some plans for the future in his mind. There is no doubt that Xingzaki Xilan will definitely resist the Changshan group resolutely. GLUO will assist her while understanding the methods of confrontation to prepare for future wars. On the other hand, GLUO feels that he needs special learning and training. His current fighting method is really a waste of his physical ability. Before, the ancient martial arts that GLUO practiced could enhance combat effectiveness, but that was not a pure killing technique. Facing the fighting on the real battlefield, it was not enough, far from enough. Therefore, GLUO must learn the real fighting tactics and choose to kill all the enemies in the face of them without leaving any room. Secondly, GLUO also wants to train the use of hot weapons, firearms, tanks, and airplanes. GLUO plans to learn them all, no matter whether they are used or not. More skills are better. Finally, GLUO just wants to learn some of the source energy inscription technology unique to this world. Everyone knows that technology is the primary productive force, and at this time, the source force has never disappeared. The source energy inscription technology they possess has capabilities far beyond the Earth. GLUO has learned that mobile phones, televisions, airplanes, tanks, missiles, nuclear bombs, aircraft carriers, and other weapons are all available in this world. However, their roots are different from those of the Earth world. The extraordinary energy of the source force makes everything even more terrifying. If a cosmic war is fought, there is no doubt that the Earth world will lose. Although GLUO was reluctant to admit it, he had to admit that the Earth world had lost its source power and actually lost its ability to compete with other worlds. Source power energy is something that completely violates the normal nature of energy. A 2-meter square source crystal of a 6th level gold level wild beast can normally drive a 100,000 ton aircraft carrier. Do you dare to believe it? This is simply outrageous and does not conform to the mass energy conversion formula at all. But in this world, all this is normal, and they rarely use chemical energy such as oil, coal, and natural gas. Instead, they use inexhaustible source power energy. Energy is the foundation that drives the progress of human society. In such a place, there is a generation gap, which does not need to be compared at all, and it is directly crushed. I didn't even get into college. What can I learn about source energy inscription technology? After thinking about this series of plans in his mind, GLUO began to have a headache again. He was a mess in mathematics, physics, and chemistry, and his learning ability had almost degenerated. Can he learn a heavenly book-like knowledge from scratch? Chapter 572 Obey. Let's put this aside for now, and learn firearms first. GLUO suddenly remembered that the planes and tanks in this world are different from those on Earth. If he learns them here, they will be useless in Earth. It is estimated that he can only practice with hot weapons, which is still of some value. However, my strength is obviously physical ability. Why do I always think about using hot weapons? Am I going down a narrow path? GLUO didn't have any good plans to begin with, so he started to refute his own plans. After thinking about it for a long time, GLUO didn't know what to do, so he simply stopped thinking about it. Sukinghan has become a child of 11 or 12 years old now. What should I do? GLUO didn't think about future plans anymore. Other things that made him uncomfortable immediately came to his mind. Before, he and Sukinghan were married at the right age, and it was natural for them to be boyfriend and girlfriend. But Sukinghan came back to life and became a child. He was chasing him to talk about love and affection. Isn't that pedophilia? It's a crime. GLUO had not thought about this unreasonable situation carefully before because of the pressure of crisis. Now that he finally calmed down and had time to think, his mood became worse. How could he do this to a child of 11 or 12 years old? Isn't this a pervert? Even if he could wait patiently for 6 or 7 years until Sukinghan became an adult again, what identity would he appear in front of Sukinghan at that time? Brother? Uncle? After being an elder for 6 or 7 years, in the end, he showed his cards and said, I'm actually your boyfriend in your previous life, let's get married. Can Sukinghan accept this? Now, Sukinghan is 11 or 12 years old. Can Tang Ruoxi, the carefree girl, take good care of her? Will she lead Sukinghan astray and raise her into a violent girl who likes boxing? Oh, by the way, before leaving, Tang Ruoxi confessed to him, and GLUO was actually shocked at that time. As for what GLUO felt for her, it was probably like what he answered at that time. He liked her too. But this kind of liking is not love. Of course, it's not that Tang Ruoxi is unpopular, but he really didn't have any evil thoughts about her, a 17-year-old high school student. He just felt that she had a good personality and was very much to his taste. Alas, speaking of which, as the successor of the 36 Thunderhands, Tang Ruoxi has a strong and competitive personality. She looks sunny and cute, but there is a tiger living in her heart. If such a Tang Ruoxi is asked to raise Sukinghan, can she really give enough care? She has no experience in raising children. If Sukinghan is naughty, she won't beat Sukinghan. Wait, Sukinghan is 11 or 12 years old. Isn't it time for her to go to school? Which grade? Primary school? Or junior high school? It should be the first grade, but Sukinghan has no memory of the past. Can she study well? Will she be criticized by the teacher for poor grades? Will she be bullied at school? She is so beautiful, there must be many boys in school who like her. Will she receive a lot of love letters every day? When Sukinghan is of legal age, 6 or 7 years later, will she have someone she likes? By then, he will be in his early 30s. Although his appearance will not change, there will undoubtedly be a generation gap between them. Should I face reality and not give up the unrealistic fantasies of the past? GLUO could not think calmly about things related to Sukinghan, nor could he talk about letting go lightly. In the end, he could only choose to give up thinking. In the lonely silence, GLUO soaked in the water for a while. The water temperature gradually cooled down. GLUO climbed out of the bathtub, got up and washed, and changed into the clothes prepared for him by Zinkizinan. It felt quite fitting. Well, I seem to be a lot more handsome. GLUO pretended to observe in front of the mirror. He was quite satisfied with his appearance. His appearance itself was very good. Now that he has become a warrior of the 4th silver rank, the changes in his bloodline have made his appearance and temperament more extraordinary. After washing away the previous alcohol and fatigue, GLUO picked up the mobile phone prepared by Zinkizinan, studied it a little, and quickly adapted to the smartphone that was different from the Earth world. GLUO tried to look through the news, but then he remembered that he didn't know the language of this world. He could listen but not write, and was completely illiterate. It's only 6 o'clock, and it's not even daybreak yet. Let's go out for a walk. GLUO put his phone in his pocket, walked around the room boredly, and finally decided to do some rare morning exercises. Because the entire hotel had been reserved by Zinkies in iron, when GLUO came out of the suite, the long corridor was so empty that it was a bit scary, and it felt a bit like a horror movie set. GLUO used the room card to activate the hotel's elevator. He originally planned to go downstairs and walk outside, but in the elevator, GLUO saw an advertisement for the hotel's sky garden. Is this the happiness of being rich? There's a garden on the top floor. GLUO swiped the room card again, expressing his dissatisfaction and yearning for this kind of happiness of the rich, and then pressed the button for the top floor. At this time, the time was already a little after 6 o'clock. The morning star in the sky had risen, and the thin sunlight was brewing behind the clouds, like a river at high tide. GLUO stepped into the sky garden with light steps, thinking about exercising in such a good place with no one around. But before he started to stretch his body, he saw that familiar figure. The lights on the glass ceiling were deliberately turned off at this time, making the surrounding environment seem a little dim. The girl named Zinkies was curled up in a bed-like hanging chair, breathing evenly and sleeping soundly. The screen of the tablet in her hand was still on, but because it slipped from her hand, it had fallen to the side of the thin blanket on her body. GLUO stood among the green leaves of the forest and his steps suddenly stopped. Under the hazy soft light, Zinkies, who was sleeping soundly, was as beautiful as a long-lost dream. The girl's soft cheeks had a slight baby fat, and her crescent-like eyebrows gradually faded from thick to thin. Her delicate facial features were like a treasure carved by nature, flawless, but not thrilling. A head of black hair hung behind the girl, passing over her back and extending to her waist. A few strands of naughty long hair fell from the girl's cheeks, just covering the girl's flawless ears, and then fell on the beautifully curved chest. As if she felt hot, the girl kicked off the thin blanket, stretched her slender left leg straight, and her well-proportioned lines exuded a natural beauty. A faint halo seemed to flow on her jade-colored skin, hidden in the shadow of the skirt. Snap. Due to the lack of friction, the tablet on the thin blanket still fell onto the long hanging chair. The crisp sound was very awakening, and the sleeping Shizuki almost opened his eyes at once. Chapter 573 Defense. In the secluded garden, Zinkies was alert the moment she woke up, and when the girl raised her eyes, she saw GLUO staring at her not far in front of her. GLUO, you're awake. Zinkies let down her guard, as if she was relieved the moment she saw GLUO. The girl didn't have any shyness or doubt on her face. She just tightened the thin blanket on her body, and the smile on her face was light and soft. Zion, I just woke up, just wanted to exercise, just came. GLUO was embarrassed, and his scalp was numb. He really just came here, but he was stunned for a moment when he saw Zinkies among the flowers and plants. It was hard not to let others misunderstand him. He might have come here a long time ago, deliberately not wanting to wake up Zinkies, but instead staring at her with bad intentions. I know. Zinkies nodded very affirmatively, put his legs together in the blanket, and made way for most of the hanging chair, motioning GLUO to come and sit down. GLUO, you must be too tired. You didn't notice that you slept for a whole day and a night. Nearly 30 hours are? GLUO only knew that he drank a lot of wine at night and then fell asleep. He looked at the time and thought he only slept for 4 or 5 hours, but it turned out to be a whole day and a night. Really? GLUO looked at the time and noticed that the date had changed to May 28th. GLUO, don't stand there stupidly, come and sit down. Don't worry, there are no traps and no misunderstandings. Zinkies looked at GLUO, who looked innocent and determined not to do anything that would cause misunderstandings, and couldn't help but let out a moving laugh. GLUO just didn't want her to misunderstand, but it turned out to be like he was afraid of something. GLUO was upright and had nothing to fear, so he strode over and sat on the other side of the hanging chair. Zion, I'm sorry, I wasted so much time drinking. GLUO, that little bit of alcohol won't allow a 4th silver rank warrior to sleep for a whole day and night. You are just too tired. Zinky Zilan thought about everything that happened in Boshi Hospital, and her originally calm heart was once again rippled. No matter how many times she recalled it, at that time, and in that place, GLUO, who saved her with his own hands, was her hero. How are you now? Do you want to rest for a few more days? No, I'm full of energy now. I didn't go out for a whole day yesterday. What happened? GLUO looked at the girl's moist eyes and knew that she was thinking of something again and was talking about her self-attack strategy, so GLUO quickly changed the subject. Yesterday morning, Jiang Zilan woke up early. She planned to start the organization's rectification immediately. At noon, she gave me all the personnel information and then took Zhujiangxia away, saying that she was going to count the total assets and put all bases under martial law. Although Zingzaki Zilan is still in college, she has indeed received elite education, which is completely different from ordinary people. As the leader of a startup organization, her ability to grasp the key points is still very good. Since yesterday noon, I have started to sort out all the personnel information under Jiang Zilan. At least one of them is a spy, a traitor, or someone with ill intentions. I have to separate them first. Are there many such people? GLUO was no longer in the mood to play when he talked about business. Jiang Zilan's resistance branch is the foundation of their future organization. Considering Jiang Zilan's level of management of internal affairs, the personnel are extremely worrying and must be dealt with seriously. There are quite a lot, but fortunately there is Zhujiangxia. Although she doesn't like dealing with people and spends all day thinking about research, people with high intelligence are still powerful. Zingzaki Zilan rubbed her temples with her hands. It was obvious that she was very tired after all this work, but the more she sorted out, the more she admired Zhujiangxia. Her wrist was really good. Zhujiangxia had already considered the betrayal of Kakashi Kengo, so she started to divide the personnel and assets between the bases a long time ago. The situation we have sorted out now is that the situations between the 3 bases are different. One of the bases has been exposed and can be regarded as a self-destruct device that can be abandoned at any time. The other 2, one is the main base where Jiang Zilan and Zhujiangxia are located all year round. This base is the most complete, but Kakashi Kengo is also there, so many people have been lured and corrupted, and there is a certain risk. Since Zingzaki Zilan chose GLUO as his right-hand man, he did not hide his plan. As soon as GLUO heard about the situation of these bases, he knew Zhujiangxia's tricks. Zilan, if that's the case, then the 3rd base is Zhujiangxia's backup plan. She won't falsify accounts and enrich herself, will she? Ha. GLUO, you know what, the 3rd base really came about like this. Zhujiangxia said that she was going to conduct important scientific research and said that she was going to build a large laboratory, but in fact, she was completely targeting a base. The more Zinki Zilan understood Jiang Zilan's business situation, the more she frowned. The base in the open must be watched by the government and the Changshan group, and it was just a decoration. The people in the large base were restless. Although most people were inclined to Jiang Zilan, many of them were spies from outside, and with Kakashi Kengo's struggle for power, it was a mess. Fortunately, Zhujiangxia prepared a backup plan. Zinki Zilan looked at it for a long time and felt that the last base could be used. Although there were not many people, they were all the most loyal people and would not betray. So, how many people can we accept? GLUO believes in the principle of better to have less than too many people. The resistance army had been in fighting before, and it was a mess. It would be best to start from scratch. There are 300 people stationed in the 3rd base. In addition, Zhujiangxia estimates that there are 500 people who can be used. So few? Jiang Zilan has been running the business for so many years. How many people does she have? About 2,500? Zinki Zilan scratched her hair. Obviously, she couldn't give an accurate number, although she now had the files of all the personnel. However, many people said that they joined the resistance army, but they just took salaries and subsidies and did nothing. They were just decorations. Do you think they are members of the organization? This is because they are used to being rich and believe in friendship too much. GLUO could think of it. Jiang Zilan thought that she was a revolutionary, so she tried to unite everyone as much as possible. As a result, there were many people, but most of them were useless and there was no hope. Zilan, what are you going to do? I have almost sorted out the information. The personnel situation is worse than I thought, but the assets are more than I imagined. Zilan handed the tablet in his hand to Gluo. Gluo took it and looked at it. Wow, I didn't know until I saw it. I was shocked. This Zhuge Dangsha, he has a skill. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 574, Beyond. I don't know if Zhuge Dangsha is afraid of being poor, or if she has loved money since she was a child. This girl is amazing. Jiang Zilan set up a branch of the resistance army. As Zhuge Dangsha is the person she trusts the most, of course she can choose the position at will. Zhuge Dangsha is also very simple. She directly asked for the most important financial power and her favorite scientific research. Jiang Zilan attracted people and was too powerful to be removed, but Zhuge Dangsha was also a ruthless person. She directly turned most of them into employees and turned the resistance organization into a company. Look, in the first few years, the organization could only rely on Ningya King's support, but later Zhuge Dangsha invented some things and started selling them and actually made money. The revolution does not lose money, but makes money. Do you dare to believe it? Zhuge Dangsha relied on her own one-handed cover. Yes, it is one-handed cover. Although Jiang Zilan, that fool, has personnel power, she thinks about fighting and revolution all day long. She has no ability to think. On the contrary, Zhuge Dangsha holds the economic lifeline of the base. All the money comes from her, and no one dares to disobey her. What's even more amazing is that Zhuge Dangsha also left room for many people to embezzle, leaving a handle when necessary. She was simply two-faced, smiling, but actually holding a knife in her hand, just waiting for the right moment to kill. Turning the rebels into a company, turning the rebellion into a factory, and turning a losing business into a profitable enterprise. She was simply invincible. Look at Zhuge Dangsha's account. If she hadn't given Zingzaki Zilan the real bottom, Gluo and Zingzaki Zilan wouldn't have been able to tell that she had falsified it. It was clearly a profit of hundreds of millions, but Zhuge Dangsha ended up making a small loss, and every single one of them had a basis, and there was nothing unusual about it. Gluo even saw the speech at the end of the year. Although it was a small loss, Zhuge Dangsha's speech was so inspiring, and she also gave everyone bonuses. She also specifically mentioned those comrades who embezzled, knocking out one or two every year, saying that they were not doing well, and if there was no corruption, they would definitely be able to make a profit. But in fact, Zhuge Dangsha is the biggest rat. She took all the hard-earned money of everyone, and built a third base by herself. That guy is invincible. This Zhuge Dangsha is really a talent. After Gluo finished reading the accounts, he felt that Zhuge Dangsha's rebellion was really unfair to her. Such a talent would definitely become a high-ranking official in the government and run a company. He would definitely be the ultimate capitalist. Indeed, it's amazing. Zingzaki Zilan is a very proud person, but she admits that Zhuge Dangsha is capable. If it weren't for her, Jiang Zilan would have been betrayed and killed long ago. Zhuge Dangsha just likes to invent and has no time or interest in calculating and fighting with others. Otherwise, things like Kikuchi Kango would be directly played to death by her. But Zhuge Dangsha also has shortcomings, and they are big and fatal. Zingzaki Zilan took back the tablet computer handed over by Gluo, and suddenly a cunning expression appeared on her face. Gluo was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Zhuge Dangsha to have any fatal shortcomings. What's wrong? Zhuge Dangsha, she doesn't understand human nature. Zingzaki Zilan stopped joking at this time. Gluo didn't care about Zingzaki Zilan's answer at first, but he thought about it and immediately got the answer. Indeed, Zhuge Dangsha really doesn't understand human nature. She was almost invincible when she designed Kikuchi Kango, but she didn't expect Jiang Zilan to be so stupid that she actually wanted to avenge someone who almost betrayed her. In that war between Jiang Zilan and the Ghost Killer, she really wanted to die together, or without GLUO, she would have died. And Zhuge Dangsha was obviously Jiang Zilan's best friend. She had been with her for so many years. How could she not think of the choice Jiang Zilan made after knowing everything? Obviously, Zhuge Dangsha didn't know, or she didn't expect that she was too rational and didn't understand human nature. Indeed, from now on, let Zhuge Dangsha be responsible for scientific research and logistics. GLUO nodded in agreement and silently took away Zhuge Dangsha's power to manage the economy. Haha GLUO, you are narrow-minded. How can I be narrow-minded? I'm thinking about you and my career. GLUO would never admit that he was afraid that Zhuge Dangsha would make false accounts and do something small and he couldn't see it. Okay, I won't say you are narrow-minded. You take care of the economy. Me, I can't. I can only fight and make trouble. GLUO shook his head directly. He couldn't do this kind of thing and didn't want to do it. The most important thing for an organization is personnel and economy. He will set up a new unit and become the commander. The army has been crushed and taking the economy is looking for death. GLUO's idea is that Zhingzaki Zilan will be responsible for the economy himself, and at the same time, the right to appoint personnel will be in his hands, and scientific research and logistics will be handed over to Zhuge Dangsha. Jiang Zilan is the same as GLUO. As a general in charge of the army, he doesn't care about other things, just fighting. Moreover, with Jiang Zilan's personality, GLUO wants her to be mainly responsible for base guards and large army operations, which GLUO doesn't understand. But GLUO felt that he could do intelligence reconnaissance, special operations, assassination of enemy leaders, and time management. After all, he was good at small scenes and lone wolf tactics. GLUO, I understand what you mean, but, like I said before, facing the Changshan group, can we really rely on you and me to win? Zhingzaki Zilan knew that GLUO was thinking about her, but the girl's ideas were different from GLUO's, and could even be said to be very different. GLUO, the two of us can't do everything. We must have real companions. I think Jiang Zilan and Zhuge Dangsha can be trusted, and I'm willing to believe them. How about trying to accept them? Ha. When you put it that way, it's me who is stingy. The two of them, yes. GLUO was worried that Zhingzaki Zilan's heart was too pure. Human nature is always complicated. When a large organization is established, every aspect is full of filth. She thought too simply. However, GLUO also felt at this time that Zhingzaki Zilan was different from her. It could be said that Zhingzaki Zilan was pure or naive. But in fact, Zhingzaki Zilan is Ningye King's sister, the absolute controller of Huatang Group in the future, and she is not short of money. GLUO feels how big this organization will be, how many people will be involved, and how much money, but Zhingzaki Zilan, in the final analysis, she actually doesn't care. Even if Zhingzaki Zilan embezzles everything, it doesn't matter, she doesn't care, she just wants to fight against Changshan Group. GLUO's idea is of course nothing wrong, but Zhingzaki Zilan feels that facing an enemy like Changshan Group, she can't do it. She can only find a way to unite her base, such as GLUO, Zhingzaki Zilan, and Jiang Zilan, and rely on them to manage everything, and she can be a mascot. Chapter 575 Destiny. In Zhingzaki Zilan's heart, what's important is not power, money, or people. What's really important is to be able to take revenge and fight against the Changshan Group. Zhingzaki Zilan was born in a wealthy family. She has nothing to lack. She just wants revenge. That's good. Zhingzaki Zilan had anticipated various answers from GLUO. Now GLUO gave a positive answer, which made her very happy. After all, Jiang Zilan and Zhuge Dangsha founded the resistance branch together, and now Zhingzaki Zilan has parachuted in as a top leader. The only person she can fully trust and rely on is GLUO, because GLUO once risked his life to save her. GLUO was also trusted by Fu Sining and entrusted crossing Ruo to him. GLUO was also favored by Zhingzaki Zen, who directly believed in him unconditionally. If this is a coincidence, Zhingzaki Zilan is willing to accept it. If this is fate, Zhingzaki Zilan will go there happily. If this is cause and effect, Zhingzaki Zilan will not retreat. By the way, GLUO, there is something I want to apologize to you for. I made a decision with Jiang Zilan and Zhujiangxia without asking you. Don't apologize first. What's the matter? GLUO saw that Zhingzaki Zilan was about to bow and apologize and immediately stopped her. People can't say half of what they want to say, they have to say it in full. It's like this. Yesterday morning, Jiang Zilan woke up from the alcohol and found me to ask me about the new name of the organization. The name of the organization? GLUO blinked, feeling that his feelings were wasted. He thought it was a big deal. After all, it turned out that these three people directly decided on the name of the organization. Well, if you want to say it's a big deal, it is indeed a big deal, but it's not a big deal. He is one of the four giants, and he didn't even ask. It's really hurtful. Thinking of this, Zhingzaki Zilan's apology is fine. Zilan, then what? What name should we choose? Jiang Zilan has a good name. She thought of it a long time ago. She came down to ask me, and I couldn't do anything. Besides, it's just an organization name. What name? Tell me, I can accept it. That Jiang Zilan came to ask me when you were drunk and asleep because she was afraid that you would not agree to this name. She spent a lot of effort to get Zhujiangxia to agree. Zilan, don't be so timid. Just tell me. I can handle it. World Salvation Association. What? World Salvation Association. Zhingzaki Zilan felt a little embarrassed when she said this name, but there was nothing she could do. Jiang Zilan found her early in the morning and came down to ask me, as if she would not get up unless Zhingzaki Zilan agreed. Moreover, Jiang Zilan handed the entire organization to her and worked hard to avenge her. It was just a matter of the name of an organization, and it was not something that could not be agreed. Is this fate? GLUO covered his forehead and felt a little pain in his lungs. World Rescue Association. Why is it the World Rescue Association again? GLUO remembered very clearly that Jiang Liu claimed to be the head of the Shanghai branch of the World Rescue Association. When he was on Earth, he wanted to set up a small organization and jokingly decided to set up the World Rescue Association. But now, in another world billions of light years away, Jiang Zilan actually caught this name and refused to let it go. For this reason, the scholar got off his seat and asked, "Okay, World Rescue Association, just World Rescue Association, that's fine." What could GLUO say? He could only bite the bullet and agree. Then, GLUO, I will be the president of the World Rescue Association in the future, and you will be the vice president. Zhujiangxia and Jiang Zilan will also be vice presidents. Zhingzaki Zilan looked at GLUO's toothache expression and was a little worried, but GLUO agreed at once, so she was relieved. Okay, it's okay. GLUO rubbed his head and didn't have any emotional color for these little things. Also, there is the issue of division of labor. I haven't decided on this yet. I want to discuss it with you. You decide. GLUO, as we talked about before, I want you and Jiang Zilan to lead a troop each, and you will not be subordinate to each other. Jiang Zilan leads an organized force, responsible for base protection and large-scale army operations. The troops you are in charge of are organized in the form of squads, mainly responsible for special operations and local conflict countermeasures. Okay, we've talked about this before, and I have no objection. By the way, in terms of personnel, Jiang Zilan must have many more people than you, but your people are all realm warriors, and they are mainly focused on management. You don't have to worry about this. I understand that the training of realm warriors is very resource intensive, and it is impossible to have as many as a regular army. GLUO was not a person who was greedy for power. As for the issue of having more people than his troops, it was simply stupid and stupid. A realm warrior could beat 100 of them. Why would he compare numbers? Is he sick? Zilan, haven't we talked about all this? We are going to fight against the Changshan group, not warlords, not to conquer the world. In addition, Zhujiangxia is responsible for scientific research and logistics. I'm responsible for personnel and internal affairs, and as for the economy, I originally wanted to hand it over to Zhujiangxia, but she refused and asked me to find someone else. No problem, I totally agree. GLUO was not surprised that Zhujiangxia refused to manage the economic accounts. Although she was short of money for scientific research, Zinke Zilan was not a person who lacked money at all and would not let her down. If Zhujiangxia blindly suppressed the economic power, it would instead attract fear and affect the relationship with Zinke Zilan. Obviously, among the 4 giants of the World Salvation Association, Zhujiangxia is the smartest, but she is very rational and will never overstep her boundaries. Jiang Zilan doesn't have so many thoughts, she just simply wants to ruin this world. Zinke Zilan simply wants revenge and fights against the Changshan group. She tends to be naive and idealistic, but not pedantic and ignorant. As for Gluo, as a person from another world, he is not interested in all this. He just wants to accumulate experience in fighting against the Changshan group and polish himself at the same time. In the future, Gluo has to consider the matter of Heaven's Blade killing, and he also has to find Les Zhengxia and even take care of crossing Ruo. As for the present, he will treat it as a like-minded person to start a business together, and success or failure is not important. Then Gluo, it's settled. After getting Gluo's affirmative answer, Crossing Qi Xinyan breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Although many of these things have been discussed with Gluo, Zhujiangxia, and Jiang Zilan, more of them are still her own thoughts. After all, she is the president of the World Salvation Association and the only boss recognized by Gluo and the other 2. If there is no Crossing Qi Xinyan, Gluo will not recognize Jiang Zilan, a stubborn person, as the boss, and will only be on guard against Zhujiangxia, and will not open up to her. Similarly, Zhujiangxia will not listen to Gluo's words. Although Jiang Zilan doesn't care, her subordinates can't do anything to Gluo, who is poor and has a mysterious identity. Therefore, the president of the World Saving Association will only be Hishizuki Erita, and only Hishizuki Erita. She is the link between everything. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.